Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Dean. I also go by EndlessCola in certain places around the internet, and I'm joined today by Jordan. How are you doing today, man?
Doing pretty good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. When I started playing Paper Mario, it was because of you, so I felt like I had to have you on this episode, even if I kick you off afterwards.
I am a hype man, 100%. If I get into something, I try and get everybody else into it as well. That unfortunately has not always worked out in my favor because I do like some bad games sometimes, but Paper Mario I think is an exception.
I think we all like some bad games, some bad movies, whatever the case may be. But I will say that you led me down a deep rabbit hole by making me play Thousand Year Door. So
you're welcome.
It was a great rabbit hole. I actually enjoyed, spoilers, I enjoyed every single Paper Mario that I've played. The only one that I haven't played at this point is Sticker Star. So they were all really good in their own way. You just kind of have to appreciate them for what they are, you know?
Yeah, you went Padawan to Master real quick because I've only played the 64, the very first one, and I've played Thousand Year Door. The other ones... And I grew up on these. So I had the N64 cartridge for Paper Mario, and I played it on N64. Not necessarily when it came out. I got it a little bit afterwards. But that was one of my first turn-based RPGs that I was playing. Around the same time I had the PlayStation, so Final Fantasy was mixed in there. And then I rediscovered others moving on. But it was like a staple for me, childhood staple, playing Paper Mario. And then Thousand Year Door came out, blew me away. And then I don't know what happened with the other ones. I just was underwhelmed, I think, with the one that came after. What was the one directly after Thousand Year Door?
Super Paper Mario on Wii.
Okay, and I heard that one actually is good. I think you had good impressions with it, right?
It's very good, but the thing with Super Paper Mario is that it almost entirely does away with the RPG thing, and it just turns back into a Mario platformer that happens to be paper-based.
I think that's what did it for me, because at that time I loved turn-based games. I was extremely into Final Fantasy series. I played all the PlayStation 1 series, and I went back and played Final Fantasy 6 because I had missed that. And I was enamored with at that time, the complexity of the badge system and the active battle commands like blow up with blocking, the super blocks, and the actual timed attacks, and all of them being different, being able to time your jumps. Like I just love that. Like as a kid, and even going into my teen years, I just loved those mechanics. And then to see Super Paper Mario go to a non-turn based style, to just a generic, well, not generic, but just a normal kind of Mario game. At the time I felt slighted. I kind of was a little upset by it, so I didn't necessarily purchase it and play it. It kind of fell off my radar.
And I mean, we'll get into all of that, I'm sure. But I gotta ask you, man, the recording of this episode happens to be a little fortuitous because just this week, Nintendo announced Paper Mario: The Origami King for Nintendo Switch, the latest entry. How are you feeling about that? I'm assuming you've seen the trailer for that already.
I definitely have seen it. I've seen it a few times, and what a weird drop. Was that not weird of Nintendo to just one morning throw a pretty anticipated game just out in the wild like that?
I think so, but also I think Nintendo has this impression that nobody really cares about Paper Mario. If you look at the sales history, especially more recently, they're not great. And I think as a fan, you would attribute that to the fact that they just went, okay, so we got these two really great RPGs. Forget that. We're going to do our own thing that's completely wild with this series and just go all over the place, even though that may or may not be what people want.
Yeah, the only games that really stuck to a formula were the first two. The rest of them, it felt like an entirely new team was just doing whatever, new system that they wanted to put into it, and they just ran with it, and to varying degrees of success.
Yeah.
And this one even looks really weird with the battle system. There's only about a few seconds of the battle system, but now it's kind of three-dimensional. You're moving the enemies in a circle, it looks like, and you're lining them up to do multi attacks or multi jumps, and it's weird. And if I sound apprehensive, it's because I'm a traditionalist when it comes to things that I grew up with. And if you just gave me Thousand Year Door exactly, just with a new story, new badges, new enemies, that you would probably win me over. You wouldn't innovate. You wouldn't get new fans, but man, I'd be really happy. So I'm going to give it a try. I'm not going to make the same mistake I made with Super Paper Mario.
That's good to hear, man. I'm really tempted to play Sticker Star, which is the only one that I haven't played so far. before we get to this game, even though that game is almost universally hated, even by fans like me who like all the other ones. But just to have that kind of context.
It just does not look good either. I don't know what they were thinking. That one was just so weird.
Yeah, and I mean, from what people are telling me, the choices that they made in that game are baffling. But nevertheless, I mean, at some point I'm going to play it. I really wanted to wait until I can stream that and play that through with my audience. But dude, capturing video from the 3DS at this point is a nightmare and a half and will cost you a mint. So
is it the specific adapters, or do you have to modify the video output in some way?
So that's the thing. There's two solutions for it right now. Either you can use a software-based solution, which you can modify almost any 3DS to do that. But the problem with that is that you have to send the signal over Wi-Fi, which makes it really laggy and really janky. So it looks pretty terrible. The other solution is hardware-based, where you have to modify the console itself and basically put an entire capture card into your 3DS. The problem with that is that nobody's making them anymore. Everybody who is doing it has since gone, nobody wants a 3DS anymore. This isn't worth my time to do. So you can buy them on eBay. They're just prohibitively expensive, and you have to hope that they still work correctly because they're probably pretty old.
How many streamers are really streaming 3DS games, though? I don't feel like I see a lot.
Yeah, in this day and age, not very many. I would say probably most of the people who have one right now are just sitting on it. But it's also one of those things where, given the state of 3DS capture cards, you don't really want to sell it because you can't get another one. You're going to be SOL if you change your mind and decide that you do want to stream or record something. Mm-hmm. Also, I think a lot of those people are probably making YouTube channel videos and things like that where capturing gameplay, even if you're not streaming it or whatever, might be beneficial to them. So they probably want to keep it for that kind of a reason.
I remember I messaged you after the trailer came out for the newest Paper Mario game, and I was like, man, it's like the game trailer comes out and it's released in a few months from recording this podcast. It's released about 2 months away.
2 months to the
2.5 months away.
Comes out July 17th.
Yeah, wow, there you go. And I messaged you, I'm like, what is it, 2008? Back when, E3, you got the highlights and the launches in July or June, and then they were launching that year. There's no more, back then they didn't have, games shown or trailers or anything like that for games coming out 2 years down the pipeline, which is kind of what we're experiencing now. Like, we get teased on these great things but they always seem so far away every E3. But 2 months from the release, like, I can't remember another, not necessarily AAA. I wouldn't call Paper Mario AAA, but it's a pretty large franchise, and it's a storied one too. So 2 months is pretty incredible. I don't know why they held their cards like that.
It's interesting because with everything that's going on right now, the industry kind of consensus seems to be that Nintendo is really struggling, mostly because Japanese employees are very much like scheduled, wake up in the morning, go to the office, do what you're going to do, then come home, spend time with your family, rinse and repeat. And so they're just not set up to work from home like we would be here in America. Like, having a computer in the home apparently is not as common as it is here. And having a computer that you can do actual work as a game dev or whatever the case may be is even less common. So it seems like the issues that they're having are, they intended to reveal this earlier in a direct or something like that, but they just can't, because they can't put together a direct to showcase these kinds of games. And so maybe this game was supposed to come out in July anyway, and they just now were able to scrape together this trailer to put it out there and let everybody know about it.
Well, I hope it's a good game. I hope that it's not an afterthought. And it looks beautiful with the paper art, the origami. Like, they're doing some impressive things on the Switch, and they're kind of doing what they did with the GameCube. They're not going for graphical fidelity. They're going for interesting art styles with these games, and they're really highlighting how beautiful that these new styles can be on the Switch. While maybe not graphically intensive, they still look gorgeous. Things like Animal Crossing. I know I'm not going to dip too much into that, but it's a simple game, but it does look beautiful. It's a very simple, minimalist type of art style, but it is gorgeous in its own right. And I think that this Paper Mario looks even more incredible. So I'm looking forward to it.
I think that despite the limited hardware that Nintendo is working with because of the nature of the Switch, they came out really strong with Breath of the Wild. That's a absolutely gorgeous game by, I would say, anybody's standards.
Yeah.
And they've only continued to improve. I mean, Luigi's Mansion 3, which came out, what was that, last year? That game is...
last October.
Yeah, that game is stunning, especially the in-engine cutscenes, just incredible. This game continues that trend, although I would say that the Paper Mario games tend to be some of the better looking games on whatever console they happen to be on. That may have to do with just the aesthetic that they have. It's so simplistic and minimal, kind of like Wind Waker cell-shaded type of style, that it gives them a lot of...
Absolutely, yeah.
Gives them that kind of an advantage. But
that's what I was thinking of when I was thinking of GameCube games like Wind Waker, Beautiful Joe, those games which have a really unique art style were able to get away with a lot.
Right. But I will say, to your earlier point, I don't think that any Paper Mario has ever been an afterthought. Now, keep in mind, Paper Mario is made by Intelligent Systems. These are the guys that make Fire Emblem, and you can see what they're doing with that over there. Although, to be fair, the most recent Fire Emblem, which everybody seems to think is the best thing since sliced bread, was primarily developed by Bandai Namco, I think. And Intelligent Systems just kind of supervised that project, put their creative input on what they would like those characters to do, that kind of thing, from what I hear.
It's funny that it's made by the same people that make Fire Emblem, because it is just, it's like they're interns for like game mechanics and everything. They're like, okay, we're going to warm you up with some Paper Mario games, and then you're going to get to the real turn-based strategy, and we're going to put you on Fire Emblem.
It almost seems to me, I don't know the inner workings of Intelligent Systems or how large that team is. I don't think it's a multi-team company, multi-team studio or whatever, but it seems to me like they have two different groups that work on things like Paper Mario and that work on things like Fire Emblem.
Mm-hmm.
Just because like the philosophy there is so different.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, it could be that they get so like head down into these Fire Emblem games that after a while they're just like, all right, let's make a Paper Mario game and just chill out for a while. We can have some cool cardboard and paper stuff going on now.
Sidebar, I would really welcome Paper Mario to branch out, like make paper a franchise or a series, like Paper Zelda, paper anything. Man, any Nintendo license, put paper in front of it and I would probably eat it up. I
mean, I've been saying this for years, but I would kill for like a turn-based Zelda game. Just like a real RPG. It can be as basic as the original Paper Mario or Super Mario RPG, something like that, but just something that I could dig into, turn-based battles with Zelda characters. That would be absolutely incredible.
I just imagine, like, the first thing that pops in my head when I think of Paper Zelda is like a nice stylized paper version of like Link to the Past Zelda, and he's just jumping in the air, and he's like sword downing on a line of different moblins or something, and you have to tap A every time over them to bounce and hit them all.
Kind of like the bounce jump that you can do in Paper Mario.
Absolutely like that, or he has like the megaton hammer, and he has to twist around like a 1,000-year door, and you have to hit A at the right time to let it go. Just, man, I'm a real big fanboy for a 1,000-Year Door. It definitely shows, because all my mechanical ideas are coming directly from that game.
And I mean, we'll get into that in a few here, but I mean, there's definitely a good reason for that, I think.
Yeah.
But before we get into all that and really get into the meat and potatoes of our show here today, let me just ask you, man, with COVID going on outside, we're all locked indoors. What have you been doing to entertain yourself? Like, what are you reading? What are you playing? What are you watching?
Man, what am I doing? But so I work a lot. I already worked from home before this, so now I just work from home.
Sure.
So,
sure.
And part of my position is to help and facilitate others working from home as well. So I've been busy there, of course. So I'm not playing as many video games as I would like, but I did finally get my hands on my first PlayStation since PlayStation 2. I got a PlayStation 4 Pro for a great deal through OfferUp, not a sponsor. And I got the system, had to replace the hard drive, whatever, had an extra one. And got a copy of Final Fantasy VII Remake, been playing that to death, 40 hours into it, and I love it. It's a very evil game. Like, I already know the story of Final Fantasy VII because it's a cherished game for me. So getting to know the characters even more, it's heartbreaking. And I just know the inevitability of the game. So I've really been loving that. Outside of it, I've been playing a lot of Animal Crossing.
Of course. Everybody has, it seems like.
Yeah. Wow. Whew. I would love to know, or, after all this thing is over, I would love some study to find what percentage of the game's sales were directly influenced by quarantines around the world. We briefly talked about this. I'm saying it's no more than 30% maybe, but that's still 1/3 of the actual sales. I think that's probably a conservative amount to say that a third of its success is attributed to the quarantine, but I could be completely wrong, and I could be overestimating the number of diehard Animal Crossing fans like myself that were there throughout all the series that were ready for this game to launch. But it's been a smash success. I'm glad to see it. It's not without its flaws, of course, but it's been great. I've been spending a lot of time there. I'm still since March 20th. I had played every single day. I've had that 7-day streak, extra bonus Nook miles every day so far, which is the longest time I've consecutively played an Animal Crossing game. So it's got me hooked. That's pretty much what I've been doing. What about you?
Well, I mean, I don't get to play very much when I'm not streaming either. So most recently, I played through Final Fantasy VII. And I mean, if you wanted to, you could always catch that on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/EndlessCola Arcast.
The original one, right?
The original Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah.
I played that on PS4, and which is a godsend. I mean, if you can play the Steam or more recent versions of that game, I highly recommend it. Steam might actually be the most definitive way to play it because it has all of the features that something like the PS4 or Switch version has, but you can also modify it very easily.
Does it have the instant limit and health and MP and the 3 times travel? Is that on Steam?
It does, yeah.
Oh, okay. See, I don't own it on Steam. I own it on Switch. I own my old physical copy, which is somewhere packed up. But I didn't actually know that it had that on Steam as well.
Yeah, and I mean, Switch is another great option because then you have the ability to take it with you, which is incredible. I mean, me, myself, I own it on PS1, PS3, PS4. I think I own the Switch version too. So I own a lot of copies of this game. And I've played through it probably 4, 5, 6 times in my life. But I just finished it most recently. I got the platinum on that. I did virtually everything. There were a couple little things that I missed, like some weapons. I didn't get Kate Sith's ultimate weapon because nobody likes Kate Sith anyway. And I didn't get a couple of the enemy skills because I missed out on that by not having the enemy skill materia early enough.
It's ruthless. I mean, if a lot of them, if you miss it one time, that's it.
Well, I mean, there's always another option to get enemy skills. There's, as far as I can remember, there's not a single enemy skill in the game that you only have one chance to get. But
Really?
that second,
I remember it differently.
Well, the thing is, like, that second chance might be against Diamond Weapon, or that second chance might be a one-off against an enemy in the Northern Cave, or something like that. So you'll have another chance, but what that chance is it could be a very long time, and if you ever see it again. Specifically for me, the one that I missed is Trine, which isn't a great skill to begin with, let's be honest, but you have 3 chances in the game to get it, and by the time I got the enemy skill material, all 3 of those chances passed. So it is what it is, but enemy skill mastery is not part of the guidelines for getting the Platinum Trophy, so I did that. I had a lot of fun with that. I actually got one of my regular viewers on Twitch into Final Fantasy VII and into the lore, and he's looking into that and like what Square went through to actually make this game and their trials and tribulations and fallout with Nintendo after Final Fantasy VI. And it's been really cool to expose a new generation to Final Fantasy in that way.
It's a great story.
For clarity, he's a younger guy.
If I remember correctly, Square was holding out on Nintendo's promise to launch it's like adapter or their add-on for the N64 to play CDs, right?
Sort of. So what happened is Square really wanted to go to a disc-based medium, and they were pleading with Nintendo to do so. And so when Nintendo launched or announced the Ultra 64, as it was known originally, and it was a cartridge-based medium, Square felt slighted, like Nintendo didn't care about them, even though they brought them all this business and all these phenomenal titles, which they did. So Square was like, to hell with this, to hell with you. We're going with these other guys that you also pissed off, Sony, and we'll see what we can do over there. And you might have heard of the company that they kind of founded. It's called PlayStation. It's little known video game development company that, I mean, they've got 4 consoles. They're around. But yeah, I mean, Final Fantasy VII, which is the first Square game on PS1. Is that accurate?
It is.
If it's not,
first Square game.
If it's not the first Square game, it's definitely the first one of real note. And it was enormously successful. Really made PlayStation what it is today, if we're being honest. So
it definitely jump started a lot for them, but PlayStation had a number of incredible titles too.
I mean, PlayStation's a monster. It always has been to this day. Yeah. I mean, PlayStation 1 was huge. PlayStation 2 is the best-selling console of all time. PlayStation 3 outsold Xbox 360 eventually. And PlayStation 4 is like right on the DS's heels at this point. So it's crazy, man. PlayStation is no joke. Although they've never really had any competitive edge in the handheld market. They were killing it with PSP until the DS came out. And then the Vita was, well, we just don't talk about the Vita. Speaking of the Vita, I've also been playing a couple of games on there recently. I played this little game called The Perils of Baking. So I played through that yesterday. It's a little like 8-bit platformer game. And it's on sale for like $2 right now. It's
not what I thought you were going to say. The Perils of Baking. I thought it was going to be like some kind of like PlayStation cooking.
No, yeah, it's a platformer. It's very reminiscent of Mario, but like not quite as. Honestly, it kind of reminds me of a Flash game. To be honest with you, it's not super good at anything, but for $2, like it entertained me for like 4 hours, something like that, to get the platinum in that game. And are
you just hunting trophies or something?
No, I mean, like, I love Final Fantasy VII, so that was something that early on when I was playing through that game, I decided I was going to do. It's not a very hard platinum to get. And then with Perils of Baking, honestly, the only reason I played that at all is because that guy who made that game also made this game Twin Breaker that came out really recently as a collaboration with Colin Moriarty and Chris Raygun, who do the Sacred Symbols PlayStation podcast. And I like what they do, generally speaking. So I just kind of picked that one up randomly. And that's just like a brick breaker game. But the conceit for that game is instead of having one paddle to bounce the ball off of, you have 2 that you control at any given time. And like halfway through the game, they give you 4, which gets really chaotic and difficult. But that game was fun enough that I was like, all right, well, for $6, I can own this developer's entire library. Let's go ahead and give that a shot.
The art style's pretty cool on it, too.
Yeah, it is.
I'm looking at a picture of it. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty nice. Perils of, like I was saying, though, Perils of Baking is not super great, but it's fun to kill like 4 hours or something like that. If you just want to play through it real quick, you could probably beat the entire game in like 2 hours, maybe less. And then his other game, Hyroxia, that I started today, that game is just a shmup. And again, it's not really anything special. It's like a 16-bit shmup. But it's a lot of fun. I would honestly say at this point, Hyroxia is probably my favorite of the 3. It's the most modern, complete-ish game of those 3. But they're all fun enough in their own right, and none of them are expensive. The most expensive one is Twin Breaker, and that's $10. So they're also apparently going to bring them to Switch later this year. So that'll be cool.
Like every other game ever made.
You know what? That's the big problem right now, right? Is like Switch has got too many games, which is hilarious when you think back to when it launched in 2017 and everybody's big complaints, there's nothing to play on this thing.
They didn't trust the indie the indie appeal at all. Like I remember the shop was desolate. There was nothing really on there. I mean, thank God it launched with Breath of the Wild.
I think, I mean, if you asked me to guess, I would say that software sales are being pushed by hardware sales. I think a lot of people are really intrigued by the Switch as a concept. And then once they get into it, they're just hungry for something to play. But I mean, that being said, they drop so many games every single week on that platform now that a lot of games are just getting buried. Early on, it was, indie devs especially saying that their games are outselling all of their platforms 3-1 on Switch and crazy things like that. But that's really not the case anymore. There's just too much competition on Switch. It's turning into, every other online ecosystem all over again, where there's just so many games that nobody can reasonably find them, much less purchase them.
Yeah, and the online UI isn't fantastic. Like the Nintendo Shop UI on the Switch, it's not that great. And it's a little laggy. I don't know if your experience is snappier than mine, but my experience with the eShop, it's clunky.
It's very laggy from time to time. I have a lot of issues where I just want to look through the sales and it takes me like a half an hour because I have to wait for it to load one more line of games, or, it takes a second, it feels like, when you first jump into the eShop to even go from the featured section that starts you on to like great deals or down to Switch Online or wherever you want to go. Like it hitches all the time. And I mean, which is crazy when you think about it, given that the simplicity of that UI doesn't really lend to that kind of hitching. But I don't know if that's a consequence of the limitations of the hardware or what it is, but it's not a great experience.
Definitely could be.
Yeah, it definitely could be. But I mean, to be honest, can't they all be better? Like, Xbox is not great. PlayStation's not great. Switch is not great. Steam is not great. Epic is not great. Everybody has their own problems.
Well, Steam is not great. I say Steam is probably the best example, but they've been doing it for almost 20 years.
My real problem with Steam is that unless you're super familiar with it, which I'm admittedly not, you're the PC guy, it's really complicated to just navigate randomly. Like, when I just want to jump in there and find something, it's like unnecessarily complex to get to where it's bogged down in menus. That's what it is. Steam is just way too bogged down in menus.
Well, Steam's approach versus Epic's approach is significantly different. Steam definitely has a dated I would consider it at this point a dated UI. Being bogged down in menus, I think you're absolutely right. There's a lot of options, there's a lot of menus, but that's what happens when you iterate on the software over, close to 2 decades. You have all this random stuff that people wanted 10 years ago that maybe doesn't translate well now, but we've gotten so used to it that we just kind of accept it. I do like the change to the library that they introduced last year, I think it was, to kind of modernize a little bit. But I've been on Steam a long time, and it usually gets my curated stuff right. So Steam does a pretty good job of letting me know when a new game moves into beta, or a new game is just released that kind of matches what my library has, or the types of titles that I've clicked on or added to my wish list. So I've purchased things. I purchased too many things on Steam, first of all, but I've definitely purchased things just from its recommendations that it does provide me.
I mean, it's funny because Steam gets me to buy games on there, and I don't even play PC games. Like, I have this I have an enormous library between like Twitch, Epic, Steam, and whatever the hell else on PC. I have an enormous library of games on PC, and I never play on PC. It's a ridiculous problem to have. I mean, just the other day, I sent you the link to it, but there was this big like charity sale that IDOS was doing for like 54 games for $40 or something like that, and I bought it. Why? Like, I don't.
Why?
I mean, to be honest, I bought it because I like the idea of getting a bunch of games, but also doing something positive for those in need right now. It's really why I bought it. And I may never play those games, but at least I know that those dollars went somewhere productive, even if I never play them.
That's how Humble Bundle gets me a lot, too.
I was this close to buying the Humble Comics bundle last month. It was every Walking Dead comic ever made for like $17.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a really great deal. If I didn't already own them all, I was like, I kind of want that. Hell, if I could have integrated them into my Comixology library, which apparently you can't, but if I could have, I would have bought it just to have them all digital, take them with me on my phone wherever I am, that whole kind of thing. Other than that, though, I think the only other thing that is new for me that I've seen is I watched this movie on Netflix that was recommended to me called The Platform. Have you seen this thing?
No, I have not.
So The Platform is like a horror thriller type of movie. And I don't know if you're into those kinds of movies at all. I'm assuming that Lauren's not, but I mean, I can't say for sure.
I mean, if it's got a good story and like a good twist, I can get into it usually.
Okay. So the conceit for The Platform is that there's this guy. It's kind of a cold open. You're just following this guy who wakes up in a quote unquote prison cell. That's this big giant room, and he's got his cot, and directly across from him is an older gentleman on another cot. And in the middle of this cell is a big hole. And apparently this is a Spanish language film, by the way. It's a foreign film. But in Spanish, the name of the movie is The Hole. I don't know why they changed it to The Platform. I mean, I do know why they changed it to The Platform. Like, it makes sense. But the conceit is that every day, this platform comes down through the hole with food on it, and that's how they eat. But the problem is that this prison is stacked up on top of each other. So floor number 1 gets all the food that they want. They can eat whatever they want. It doesn't matter. By the time it gets all the way to the bottom, there's usually no food at all. And they'll be in whatever cell on whatever floor they're on for 1 month. And then they'll be like gassed in the middle of the night and moved to a different floor. And so for some months, you'll be on the very bottom and you have nothing to eat except the other person that's locked in that cell with you. And some months you'll be at the very top and you'll have all you want to eat no matter what. And we're talking like luxurious food. This is like the Hunger Games, right? Like the difference in these people in the cells and the people feeding them is immense.
Wait, did you just casually drop except the other person in the cell with you?
Oh, did I? Was that
so
me?
They eat each other? You just gloss over that? Pretty major plot point,
There
I would
might
say.
be some casual cannibalism in this movie. I mean...
Oh, some classy cannibalism. Tasteful.
just a touch. But yeah, there's a lot of interesting characters and things like that. And I mean, ostensibly, it's a movie about the kind of class disparity around the world and how the rich have everything, which causes the poor to get even poorer and that kind of thing. But even disregarding that, it's a cool thriller to watch.
I'm assuming there's some higher reasoning behind the actual placement of the prisoners in the order of the cells themselves, right? Like you find why people are in number 1 versus number 100 or whatever?
Not really. It seems, as far as the movie presents it, that it's just totally random. You might get lucky and end up on the first floor. You might get really unlucky and end up on the final floor. Just total by chance.
Oh, okay. Well, that's less fun. I thought there was going to be like, they paid their way to the top floor or something.
No. And actually, that makes it really interesting because you'll meet characters like there's this one guy whose entire goal is to escape this prison. So he ends up on the 8th floor at one point and starts yelling up to the people above him like, hey, I'm going to throw this rope up to you. Help me climb up out of here. So you see things like that going on. Like his whole thing was he was just waiting to get close to the top so he could do this. But no, there's no rhyme or reason to why they are on this floor versus that floor as far as we can tell. But yeah, it's a good movie.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
It's a good movie. Like I said, it's on Netflix. So, I mean, if you have Netflix, it's worth a watch. It's only like an hour and a half long. You have very little to lose anyway. But yeah, so I guess we're here to talk about Paper Mario, yeah?
I completely forgot we were going to talk about Paper Mario. But yes, I look forward to talking about it. 40 minutes in, and we just get sidetracked. I think we've known each other a little too long. We just get sidetracked with random stuff. But yeah, let's talk about Paper Mario.
So Paper Mario is... I was going to say it's an RPG series, but it's not really an RPG series. Like, it started out that way. I mean, I guess we should start from the very beginning, right? So, Paper Mario came out as a sequel to Super Mario RPG on the Super Nintendo. You played this game, right?
I definitely played Super Mario RPG. I didn't play it when I was younger. It's something that it's a pretty obscure game, honestly. I was around a lot of Nintendo fanboys growing up. I had every Nintendo console. I never heard about it until I was in high school, and then I got the chance to go back and play it again. And I think I got it on Wii.
Mm-hmm.
When they first launched the Virtual Console on the Wii. I think I got it then, and I played it, if I remember correctly. But somehow I was able to go back and play it. Really, really loved it. Definitely regret missing it when I did the brief time that I had a SNES. But I think it was rare even when it was launched, right?
Well, yeah, kind of. I mean, the thing with that game is it came out on May 13th, 1996. Now, in America. The reason that's significant is because the N64 came out in September of that same year. So, yeah. So the reason that nobody cared is because by this time, everybody was already like, yeah, but look at Mario 64 over there. Like, this is breaking ground. Why the hell do I care about this stupid RPG game? And keep in mind that RPGs at this point were very niche. Very niche. Like, we're talking like D&D nerds type niche, which may be more common and accepted today, but back then, you were getting bullied and made fun of for that kind of thing. So,
no, I mean, I didn't advertise that I loved Final Fantasy VII when I was younger, and then I played Paper Mario. That wasn't something that I, shouted from the rooftops. But what's funny is that although I felt like it was a niche game, that it was kind of under the radar, and that like no one played it. Like I felt like only like a really small group of us ever played it. The older I get, the more I talk to people that are my generation, the more I find that a lot of these games were beloved. I'm like, why didn't I meet more people when I was younger that loved Final Fantasy VII or loved Paper Mario? Final Fantasy VII is a little bit more popular, of course, just a little bit, but I just really didn't find anybody else. I don't know why.
I mean, I could answer that for you. The reason why is because they didn't exist. Super Mario RPG is super popular now, but at that time, it was hard to come by. It was expensive. If I recall correctly, Super Mario RPG launched for $70. I could be wrong about that, but I think it was $70 when it came out. And because we're talking back in the day, now some of the younger listeners may not remember this, but back in the day, there wasn't a fixed $60 price on new games. Games cost whatever that developer decided that game was going to cost. There were games like Final Fantasy VI, which I think retailed for $80 when it came out. $80, and that game came out in like 1994. So
that's like that's easily over 100 now. Like if you're going to adjust for inflation, well over 100 actually. So we're like the same age. I don't even remember that because my mom bought me all my games. I didn't buy them.
And I mean,
so that makes sense why she would complain so much. I don't know. Like, thinking back,
I just double checked it. $80 in 1994 is $140 today. So that's not cheap.
No one would buy a game nowadays for 140 that wasn't some type of subscription or wasn't some type of crazy bundle with all this new stuff. Like generic, no DLC game for 140. That's insane.
And what's crazy?
No one would purchase that.
What's really crazy about that is the cost of making these games has only gone up. So gamers are demanding the prices go down, but the cost of making the games that they want keeps going up. And at some point, that tension is going to break.
Yeah, it's hard. I would say the only reason that games have been able to stay around the same price for over a decade now, more than a decade probably, is the economy of scale, that the number of gamers has just increased. So they've been able to, although their margins has reduced, they have just been able to sell enough to keep their head above water, But yeah, I think you're right. Eventually that may give way.
And, I mean, this is probably a good discussion to have more in depth at a later time. But I mean, if you were really pushing me, I would say that the only reason that it stayed that low for this long is because of the pressure to keep it low for this long. I think that developers and publishers especially would really love to increase the price for this next gen that's coming out, especially. And I think we might see that finally happen. Games jump to $70, $80 a pop. But it's going to take somebody who's real bold and brave to be the first one to tell us that. So we'll see.
Yeah. It's going to be a publisher or a game company that can afford to fail if they need to. So your EAs, maybe not Bethesda anymore, but
just your larger kind of margin for error.
Not anymore. No. Wastelanders, I guess, is kind of okay for Fallout 76, but no one asked for that.
Are people going to be real disappointed when they realize that Elder Scrolls 6 is not coming out anytime soon at all?
Ooh, no.
Like, not even close.
No.
I think a lot of people have this perception that because they showed it 2 years ago at E3 that, it's coming. No, it's not. Even back then, they said it's coming out after this new Starfield IP that they're coming out with, so it's nowhere near.
I am a sucker for futuristic Starbound type games. So not necessarily Starbound, which was a great game, but just those types of games. That's why Outer Worlds, man, what a smash success that was. Love that game. Such an incredible title. I want to see a lot more from that dev team, the original Fallout team.
That's one that I have to get back to. I still have not gotten back to that game.
So Paper Mario.
Oh yeah. What about Paper Mario? So after Super Mario came out, everybody who did play it really loved that game. I mean, there's a lot to love about it. There's a lot of really cool, unique characters, some really interesting RPG systems. And I just played through this recently. I think in January is when I played through that game. And I can say from a modern lens, as somebody who didn't have any perspective on it, from playing it in childhood or what have you, because I didn't own a Super Nintendo when I was a kid, interestingly enough. I owned a Genesis, which I'm kind of bitter about because my parents picked that for me instead of letting me pick it, but not really. I mean, I don't like Sega, but it is what it is.
I did own a SNES, but I played my Genesis more, and that's where my love of Sonic came. I love Sonic so much. Top 3 favorite franchises.
You know what's funny about that is I had Sonic 1, 2, 3, and
Sonic and Knuckles.
And even when I was a kid, I was like, man, this game kind of sucks, though. Can I play Mario?
It's ridiculous. That will get me triggered real quick. I love Sonic so much.
Let's move off of that. Super Mario RPG.
Really quick. I do want to plug. There is a YouTuber named Geek Critique who has an incredible retrospective series on a number of games, but his Sonic retrospective series is amazing. I would highly recommend watching that.
Maybe I'll give that a shot.
Yeah, really, really good stuff. Okay.
Kind of bringing it full circle to where we started today. Super Mario RPG was actually not made by Nintendo. It was made by Square. Square famously making, Final Fantasy and the like. And when Paper Mario was initially in development, it was going to be Super Mario RPG 2. But because Nintendo had announced the Nintendo 64, that was going to be cartridge-based, and Square had such a falling out with them, they basically said, no, you can't use what we did. All of these original characters that we built for this game, you go to hell. So Intelligent Systems, who was developing this game, went, okay, well, let's make a game called Mario Story, which is what it is still known as in Japan today. But the premise originally was not that it was Paper Mario. It was just a 2D aesthetic. That's all it was. It had nothing to do with paper, really. Although they do play with that a little bit in the first game, it wasn't relevant. And it was also originally supposed to be a 64DD title. Now, are you familiar with the 64DD and the kind of what happened with that?
Vaguely, I know that it was a failure. That was a larger piece that that plugged into the bottom,
yeah,
right?
so interestingly, even though this add-on never came out in America, if you have an N64 and you flip it over and look at the underside, that bay for where the 64DD would go is still there. And there's actually, God, I feel like we're just plugging everybody but ourselves today. But there's another YouTuber, Metal Jesus Rocks, who he owns an American dev version of the 64DD. There were never any.
Probably extremely.
Yeah, I mean, there's never been a game released for the American 64DD, and thusly, there's nothing he can really do with it because it doesn't read. It's not region free, so he can't just put the Japanese 64DD games into it. He just can't really do much with it. But it's cool that he has it. It works. He can boot it up and see what that you don't have a disc in there looks like. But for those who don't know, the 64DD, DD stands for disk drive. It was going to be a floppy disk like add-on. Oh, Jesus. So a floppy disk is... for those that don't know what a floppy disk is like a CD before a CD. Is this little... I mean, you know what one looks like. The save icon that you see on literally everything, that's what a floppy disk is. And they were just, that's how you saved back in the day. You popped a floppy disk into your computer, saved onto it, pray you don't get it near any magnets and delete everything on it and kind of go on from there. Now, the 64DD had shielding, so you didn't have to worry about magnetizing and deleting all your games. But that's basically what it was. You had a floppy cartridge disk type thing that you would slot into the bottom of this add-on to your N64, and you'd play games from there. And the point of this was that you had more storage and more power, kind of like you did on the PS3. Or the PS3, the PS1. Jesus. Even though the 64 was technically more powerful than the PS1. But you had that extra storage space, which is what companies like Square were looking for. However, when they released this in Japan, it was a huge flop. And so Intelligent Systems went, oh, shit, curveball. We're going back to the original 64. We're going to put this on a regular cartridge. And they're kind of... design philosophy for this game, and I'll be really interested to hear what you think about this. But this game was originally intended for, according to Miyamoto, the godfather of gaming and Nintendo as a whole, quote unquote amateur gamers. It was
for amateur gamers?
That's what he said. It was intended for quote unquote amateur gamers. So
I guess I understand with the aesthetic, with the writing, well, sometimes not even with the writing, but with the overall mood of it, sure, I guess it's a little bit for amateur gamers, but I wouldn't call it an easy game. I mean, it's not something you can blow through with your eyes closed or like a 5-year-old. I wouldn't use Paper Mario as an example of, oh, you've never played a game before? Play Paper Mario. That's not what I would do.
Well, I mean, we can agree to disagree on that because I do think Paper Mario is an extremely easy game. But I'm also a 30-plus-year-old man at this point. I'm not a child. So, I mean, maybe
experiencing it for the first time.
So maybe it's different. I have a lot of years of experience with RPG games. I find it, and for clarity, like I played through the sequel to this game, which we'll get to in just a second, Thousand Year Door. Then I played through the rest of the Paper Mario games, went back to Super Mario RPG, and played Paper Mario 64 last. So I not only had a lot of RPG experience, but I had a lot of experience with Mario RPGs specifically at this point. And I played them more or less back to back to back to back. So it was a very easy game for me, but that may or may not, your mileage may vary on that.
Yeah, my mileage absolutely varied because I was a kid playing this game. It was one of my first RPGs. So I had a lot to learn. I didn't understand stats. I really didn't understand a lot of the mechanics involved. I just put badges on. Like, I didn't coordinate badges my first time playing. I was just like, I want to jump more. So I had like multi-jump on that. I didn't play it intelligently. Now I can go back. I can strategize. I can, I know how to grind. I know how to do this and that, and I can breeze through it. Of course, like any 30-year-old, I hope can breeze through this game. But definitely as a kid, I remember it being challenging for me. Definitely.
So let me ask you this: when's the last time that you played Paper Mario?
Well, The last time I think I completely beat Paper Mario, the original one, it's been years, because I got it on Virtual Console for the Wii.
Sure.
And I played it. So it's been at least since maybe the first year, second year after the Wii was released, whenever they launched N64 games on the virtual arcade there, or virtual console.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of a disparity. It's been a couple of years since you played it. It's been a couple months since I played it, but I would say that. And again, I'll be really interested to see how you feel about this, but I would say for me personally, this is probably my favorite Paper Mario game.
Yeah, I don't share that, but I definitely had a very different experience. You started with my favorite, Thousand Year Door, and the collective favorite. Like, I think if you were to ask any Paper Mario fan, usually they would say Thousand Year Door is the most complete and their favorite game.
Yeah, and I'll agree with that. I mean, again, we'll get to this in a minute, but Thousand Year Door, I would agree, is the most complete and fully realized RPG version of Paper Mario.
I'm trying to dissect what you just said. Okay. Fully, so it's the complete RPG version of Paper Mario. Okay, so you're saying it is the most RPG of the Paper Marios. It is the most.
It's the most.
Would you say it has the most complexity?
Yes, it definitely does. But really what I mean is it's the most feature-rich and feature-complete version of Paper Mario that's still an RPG. Because I think that games after this do very different things, and saying that Color Splash, for example, on the Wii U is not a feature-rich and complete game is underselling what that game actually is, because that's not what that game actually is. And it's not what that game is trying to be. It's not what Sticker Star tried to be. It's not what Super Paper Mario tried to be. They've gone in a very different direction, which we can get to in a second. But staying on Paper Mario 64 for a second, this game took what for many was the most... what's the word that I'm looking for? Let's just say the most loved feature from Super Mario RPG and took it another step forward in a very interesting way, and that is companion characters. How do you feel about those companion characters?
I love them. They make the game, I think, in the original and the sequel, they're so unique. I mean, everyone has their favorites, so you usually end up ride or dying with like two of them that are just constant in there. And then for Thousand Year Door, if you want to start, naming names, for a Thousand Year Door, it would have to be like Koops is a ride or die for me. Loved Koops.
We'll get to them in a second.
Okay.
Let's back it up here for a second. And
I love the companion mechanic. I love that every chapter you got to experience a new story, a new goal that you had to meet. There was an overarching goal, like every Mario game. They always have, here's your 7 collectibles or whatever that you have to get. Here's your islands essentially, and you need to, find the princess at the castle. Well, in the first one, it was just going through each chapter and getting I think Star Spirits, if I remember correctly, right? Yep. Okay, so that was your castle. That was your princess that you find. That was the end goal, right? Every island. So I love that it introduced someone new. It gave new moves. It gave a little bit of added complexity, and you had to choose. Different scenarios, different enemies would require different companions. I liked that you could switch between them pretty seamlessly. Later badges made it easier to switch between your companions. And I think that the way that and it's very subtle, but having certain companions out during certain story moments kind of enhanced it, because they all have different personalities. So it was charming to be able to see what this companion has a reaction to versus another one. And if you had a really favorited companion, then you knew that they were going to react a specific way, and it was just super endearing. I loved it. I loved every moment of it.
Who would you say is your favorite
in the first Paper Mario? I mean, Goombario is a classic.
Mm-hmm. Yep, first one you get.
But yeah, first one you get, so you spend a lot of time with him. I do like him a lot. He's a little spunky, wannabe adventurer. He's a lot of fun. I love Bombette.
Mm-hmm.
Always did. Thought she was great. I used Parakarry a lot because he's really powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And I love Lady Bow. Obviously, I'm looking at a list of them, so I'm remembering them. I'm not going to claim that I remember the game perfectly because it's been a few years, but with memory as specifics fades, I still remember the impact they had, and I think those three probably stood out the most.
I think so. Here's my thing. Technically, when you look at the companions from the original Paper Mario, you have 3 Koopas on this list. If you consider Lakitu's a Koopa species, I do. I'm not sure if that's canon or not, but I do consider them a species of Koopa. So definitely. You have Cooper, who's just straight up Koopa. You have Parakarry, who's a Parakoopa. And then you have Lucky Lester, who is a Lakitu. And so you have a lot of like repetitiveness in that way. But every other one is very interesting. And also, I mean, those 3 are pretty unique from each other. But you do see some crossover as you're looking at the different companions that you can give in the original Paper Mario, the movesets that they have, and how useful that they are or are not. So I think the companions are kind of a mixed bag in the first one, is what I'm trying to say. I do really like Lady Bow. I do.
Oh, man. Yeah.
I really like Sushi.
I didn't appreciate Sushi really because it was so weird that you were playing with a cheap, but yeah, he's great. Yeah, I mean, they all have their greatness in one way or another.
I'm trying to remember. So Sushi. The best part about Sushi for me is if you're following the letters that you get through the post office in that game, Sushi eventually gets a letter from her daughter, Sashimi. And dude, that was so funny to me that Sushi has a daughter named Sashimi. But the thing with the companions in this game, which we can expound upon in a minute here, which seems to be another rolling theme of this episode, but is that these characters are essentially copied, pasted, and then minorly edited for the sequel. And I think that's my biggest gripe, and why I would say that Paper Mario 64 is my favorite, because to me, it feels like the most original of the Paper Mario games.
So you're saying that there's a lot of similarities between the companions in 64 versus Thousand Year Door? Okay. I think it's a little off-putting because you start with a Goomba and then a Koopa. And
then you also get a ghost type character. You get a bomb.
Yeah, you get Madame Flurry. Yeah. But the Bomb is like Admiral Bobbery is significantly different than Bombette.
Yeah, like I'm not going to sit here and tell you that all these characters are exactly the same. They're not. Goombario and Goombella are personality-wise very different. That functionally they're basically exactly the same. But
yeah, definitely. I think they did that on purpose. I think they wanted that first companion to be similar with the sequel to get people back into it. I'm not sure. Like maybe their methodology was if we threw imagine starting with the mini Yoshi. You can name him whatever you want. Or like starting with Miss Mouse or just someone random. I think they wanted you to start with a Goomba again, maybe to make the transition easier to the sequel, or for new players to reintroduce them and go like, hey, isn't it wacky how Mario's working with a Goomba? Remember them? I'm not sure why they took that path.
Yeah, I'm not sure why they did that either. I wish that there was some kind of literature online, and there very may well be, that I just overlooked in my research while I was going through everything here. But I mean, regardless of what their motivation was, especially for somebody like me who played them very close together, that correlation between those two games was hard to ignore. So for me, it was really derivative of Paper Mario 64 in that way.
Definitely, yeah. The Koopas, the first Koopas that you get, Cooper and Koops, are very different. Move wise, I don't think they're that different though. But personality wise, yeah, okay. Personality wise, they're very different though. And Koops definitely has always stuck with me. I love Koops. He's one of my favorite. I think he's my favorite companion in the entire 64 and for 1,000 Year Door. I think he's my favorite one throughout all of it.
That's interesting. I mean, you don't really get any companions per se after Paper Mario: The 1,000 Year Door, so what you know of them is pretty much all there is to know. So I would say that that's probably a well-informed decision, even though you haven't played the rest of them. So beyond that,
yeah, my experience.
I'm sorry, go on.
Mm-hmm. I was gonna my experience is only the first two. So between the first two, Koops always stood out to me.
Right. So the story of Paper Mario 64. It's really simple. It's a really generic story. In fact, it's almost the same as Super Mario RPG, if we're being honest. Another one of those derivative type things, but that becomes kind of a running theme in all of the Mario RPG titles. They're all very simplistic to the point of being derivative of all the ones before them, with minor changes here and there. And I think that that's really why they try and do something so different and quote unquote gimmicky for every entry. Is they know that if they didn't do that, they would become so derivative at some point that there's no point in even making the game. I mean, is better, shinier graphics really cause to make a quote unquote new game?
Well, if they wanted to keep with the same structure, like we don't have to find 7-star pieces or seven of anything. You can break away from that. They could change the format, but keep the same, RPG style, keep the same style.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, I guess we'll have to see what they do with this new one, because that seems like it's going to be our best chance to get back to what these original two games were like. But if they don't do that, then, I mean, that still kind of leaves the door open to find out what that could be like.
Yeah, and once again, it's going to be very different. So the stage is like 3-dimensional now. It looks like there's still people in the stands, so there may be some mechanic where you gain popularity and you gain star power in 1,000 Year Door to pull off special moves. They may bring that back again as a returning mechanic. I hope so. I always enjoyed it.
I can tell you, it seems like that's the case, because some of the screenshots that they've released and such show that you have the ability to cheer. And like you said, that you have those fans in the stands type of thing. So it seems like they're bringing that back to 1,000 Year Door. So that lends some credence to the idea that this is going to be more like these older games.
I think one of the reasons I loved Koops too, I keep shining on him, but it was the stands brought this memory back to me. But the enemy on that first chapter, the dragon itself. I forgot the dragon's name. I'm sure I could Google it here, but I'm not going to break my train of thought. But
you're talking about 1,000 Year Door? Yeah, Hooktail.
Yes, 1,000 Year Door, Hooktail. Yes. He eats the actual audience members to gain health back.
Yeah.
That always stuck with me.
Hooktail. Yeah, we'll get to that. Before we get there, we keep trying to violently shove into 1,000 Year Door. Now, I want to give Paper Mario 64 its time to shine first. Because I have a lot to say about 1,000 Year Door, as you know. But before we get to that, the story of Paper Mario 64, how'd you feel about the story?
I liked it. I mean, the story itself, is pretty basic. It's a formula that's worked time and time again. It gives you small obtainable goals that you could complete each chapter in like a one sitting. It's like maybe each chapter is like 3 hours, maybe 2-3
Not
hours
even for most of them.
Yeah, so it's easy sit down. One play session, you can knock out a chapter, and then it's a really hard transition between them, and they're all very different and unique. The final boss fight in Paper Mario 64 is fantastic. I love that Bowser fight, and if I remember correctly, it is not only a Bowser fight, right?
What do you mean?
I think, and now I may be confusing Paper Mario 64, Paper Mario 1000 Year Door, but the final fight, of course, is with Bowser. He has the Star Rod. He has his invincibility. You use the power of the stars to remove the invincibility. Does Peach play a part in that final battle, or am I thinking of 1000 Year Door?
No, yeah, you're right. So Princess Peach and her little companion Twink in this game face off against Kammy Koopa while Mario's fighting Bowser. That's what you're thinking of.
That's right. I think don't you control Peach during the fight at some point?
Yeah, it's
yes. Okay.
It is essentially the best way I could describe it is like an on-rails RPG battle, because there's not really anything that you can do that affects the outcome, but you do have to press the buttons to do everything. And basically, it's a long battle of Peach praying that Twink gets stronger, and every turn Twink gets a little bit stronger, and then eventually just wallops Kammy Koopa in the head, and she falls off her broom and runs away. But so rolling back to the beginning here. So there are 8 chapters, but 7 locations that you go to in Paper Mario 64. The Koopa Bros Fortress, Dry Ruins. Oh God, what is chapter 3? Chapter 3 is when you fight Tubba Blubba in. You go through the Forever Forest. You go to Boo's Mansion, and you have to go to like Tubba Blubba's Gusty Gulch. It's Gusty Gulch. Thank you.
Okay.
So then you go to Gusty Gulch. You go to the Shy Guy Toy Box. You go to Lava Lava Island, which the chapter right before Lava Lava Island has my favorite character in the whole game, but we'll come back to that. Flower Fields, and then the Canadian penguin ice level.
Yeah.
Which is Shiver City, which is phenomenal. I love Shiver City. So how do you feel about those stages?
Love them. Spent a lot of time in Flower Fields, and we can talk about that if we're going to go in order. But
no, I mean, you can talk about it now.
So grinding on the Amazy Daisies in Flower Fields. So spending so much time getting to that max level from the golden. I think they're just called like the golden Amazy Daisies.
I think the Amazy Daisies are the golden ones. I think the non-golden ones have a different name.
Special. There's a special one that gives you a ridiculous amount of star points, and you just grind on that one over and over and over again. It's like a shiny Pokemon almost that just appears with a certain a certain probability, and then when you see it, you really only have one move to take it out, but it's impossible because I think it has 20 HP, so you can't do 20 HP in one move, and so you have to put it to sleep or something and get lucky and take it out. But
so here's my question to you: Why? Why would you spend so long grinding on Amazy Daisies to get to the max level? What purpose does that serve you?
I had nothing better to do when I was a kid. No. So when you're 30, you can't spend all this time grinding on things. Not always, of course. Some weekends I do have some extra time. I've got to go grind in Final Fantasy VII Remake to get another summon materia, and I'm not super looking forward to it, but I think I have a strategy to make it less painful. But I got to a point in Paper Mario, and this was like my second playthrough of it when I was younger. My first playthrough, I just struggled through the whole game, and Bowser was incredibly difficult for me. I remember using a lot of items to beat him. And the second playthrough, I had kind of a better understanding of the mechanics of the game. And then I found the Amazing Daisy. I think I may have encountered it in my first playthrough, but it just ran away and I just didn't think about it. I was like, okay, well, whatever, it's just running away. But I think a friend of mine told me, he's like, oh no, you gotta beat that special like shiny Amazing Daisy and you'll get like an incredible amount of star points. So my second playthrough, I did it, was blown away by how many star points that you get, and then just grinded on it. And then I just had nothing but time. And I wanted to know what's the max level, because I loved seeing my HP grow, my flower points grow, my badge points grow. And now that I have all these badge points, because in the first time I played it, I didn't really put much into badge points. I was just like, wow, I'm losing a lot. I need more HP. And I had like 6 badge points and like 40 or 50 HP. I had no idea what I was doing.
And for those who aren't familiar, star points are the experience in this game.
Yeah, 100. You need 100 star points for every single level. That never changes, which I do actually love that. I found that I like games that have static point values for every level. Maybe I'm just a simple folk, but I always enjoyed that I knew exactly how much in any given moment that I needed to level up. And it wasn't like I was, I'm 6,396 experience points away, and this monster here that I'm grinding on gives me 432. So I just need to do some quick calculations and I'll understand how long it'll take me. I just enjoyed getting 3 every match. So it's going to take me a very reasonable amount of time to get there. Well, the Amazing Daisy gave you like 30 or something. I think it gave you 30, and as your level grows up, it reduces slightly, but not to a significant amount to where it is still the best way to grind. So long story short, I spent a lot of time in flower fields trying to get the Amazing Daisy, and it was great. I don't know. I remember fond memories of grinding on that game for some reason.
So would you say that the flower fields are your favorite level because of that in this game?
No, it's not. I remember it a lot. Like I have visual memory of it pretty strongly. I think my favorite level is probably Chapter 3 with Tub of Lava.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that one really was. It was so cool. He was eating the booze. I think going there, it's like through the forest, and you had to find like a special path, or there was a tree that you had to find. Please interrupt me if I'm misremembering things, but I loved getting there. I loved that it was the first time in a Mario game that I'm like, oh, I'm looking at a boo and I'm not like terrified. Like I hadn't had an experience before where, boos they had character, they had dialogue, they had personality, especially Lady Bow, so much personality. And they were being hunted by something greater, and it was invincible. And I love the whole story. I love the aesthetic of the town. I love the aesthetic of the mansion. I think Chapter 3 probably is my favorite chapter, and the one that definitely stuck out to me the most. But I do also love Chapter 2. I liked getting lost in the ruins. I thought that was a lot of fun, fighting the dry bones, and the little desert oasis town, and following the thief and the whole thief storyline to try and find the right the pendants or the jewels to open up the ruins to get in, and just a lot of fond memories, definitely. Toot and Koopa, that's who the enemy was there. Loved that battle in the Chapter 2 for Dry Ruins. That was a lot of fun.
I think for me, I kind of touched on it earlier, but I think for me, my favorite chapter is Chapter 7, the Star Spirit on Ice, where you go up to Shiver City and you meet all these not Canadian, but clearly inspired by Canadian penguins. And you go through the Crystal Palace, which is really a really cool dungeon stage. It works with like mirrors, and you have to do something on one side and then it mirrors it on the other side, and there's a literal mirror right down the middle, and it's a very cool stage.
I think Chapter 7, I always ran through Chapter 7 and I don't have much memory. Like I remember the little not Canadians there. Like I remember always just laughing about that and just having a great time. But yeah, I think I was already so over leveled from being in Flower Fields. I just burned through that.
I mean, what's great to me about Shiver City and that entire chapter is it puts you in the middle of this murder mystery where everybody suspects that Mario killed the mayor, and they instantly turn on you, and everybody starts talking trash to Mario and tell him to get out of town and all this kind of stuff. Like because it's implied that this game kind of takes place in the history of Mario. Like, he's not just a nobody. People know who he is. And so the idea that these super nice penguins would all just suddenly be like, no, to hell with you, Mario. Get out of my town. I hate you. I can't believe you killed our mayor. You're a murderer and a backstabber. And then you find out that because it's kind of hinted towards that this author, Herringway, very, very clever pun there, is actually the murderer because he writes thriller novels. So clearly he knows how to murder somebody and would have done it. That he's done it. So you go on this hunt for Herringway, who's missing for some reason. Very suspicious. But it turns out he's just up in his attic and doesn't want to be bothered. God forbid a man can get a little peace of quiet in his own house. And so you jump in through his chimney and raid his house. And so he comes over to the mayor. It turns out he just had like indigestion. He's totally fine this whole time. And all the penguins are suddenly like, oh, you're cool, man. I was just playing. Like, no, you said awful things to me.
You were terrible to me. Oh, man. I love the writing in the Paper Mario games. Let's just acknowledge how fantastic it was. It's always entertaining.
To be honest, I think that's the one element of the Paper Mario games that's continued to get better and better and better as they've gone on. Mm-hmm. I honestly, truly believe that Color Splash is the funniest, best written entry in the whole series. Color Splash is something to behold, if for no other reason than because the script is so good.
Man, I definitely have not played Color Splash. I didn't have a Wii U, so I never got a chance to play it. But just there's so much character in every line of dialogue that you read in the Paper Mario franchise, and that's why you really grow to love the companions. That's why these, not Canadian penguins stick with you, because it's just hilarious. All the puns, there are a lot of puns in Paper Mario, but they're tastefully put in to where it's a chuckle. It's like, it's so endearing. And that's like the number one word that I can use to describe Paper Mario for me, is that it's endearing. It's such a warm, fun game that is just, it's smarter than you think. It's always smarter than you think it is.
Yeah, what's interesting to me is that if their design philosophy, as Miyamoto suggested, was to push this towards younger, first-time, quote-unquote, amateur gamers, making a game that's smart and well-written and intelligent like this is such a refreshing breath of fresh air, because every game that's like explicitly and intentionally marketed towards, and not even just games, books, TV shows, movies, whatever it is, if it's marketed specifically and intentionally towards kids, there's a good chance that it's dumbed down, that it's poor writing, poorly acted, whatever the case is. They just don't take it seriously. So if that truly was their intention, was to make a game that was inviting and made for a younger, more amateur audience, I think they did a bang-up job in that respect of not talking down to anybody and making it so that everybody, whether you're young, old, experienced, or inexperienced, can enjoy it. Although, to be fair, that's kind of what Nintendo does.
Yeah, I would say more than any other publisher, developer, all the hats that Nintendo wears, they've nailed that. Because I know that I can jump right back into Paper Mario if they release Paper Mario on Switch or something. If they move forward with like N64 games, or give me a Switch or an N64 Mini or some reasonably legal way to play it, because I don't have my Wii anymore, then I would jump right back to Paper Mario, and I know I would enjoy the heck out of it. I would love it again, and I wouldn't feel like I've got to slog through this baby dialogue. Like it would still get a laugh out of me. It would still get a chuckle. And you can speak to this. You just experienced it for the first time this year.
Yeah. All of the Paper Mario games make me laugh to varying degrees. They're very funny games. So the other thing that I think is really worth noting in this game, and something that will carry over to the next one for sure, Peach. Peach has her own side chapters that go alongside, and they take place parallel to the main story with Mario, where she's been captured by Bowser, who's, as ridiculous as this is, uses the power of this all-powerful Star Rod to shove his castle up underneath Peach's castle and then fly it into space. And for some reason, he's got these giant spike balls on chains dangling in front of his castle. That's extraordinarily suggestive, but I'm not going to go there.
As you do.
Like you do. If you're going to have a giant castle that rams up under another castle, you got to have the giant maces swinging back and forth in front.
On the topic of Bowser, I got to say that I think that the Paper Mario Bowsers are my favorite Bowsers of any Mario game I've ever played. Mm-hmm. I actually love Bowser in the latest Mario game. Oh my god, I can't remember the name of it. For Switch, Dean, please help me. Thank you. Odyssey, yes. I love Odyssey for a lot of different reasons, but Bowser is fantastic in there. But the Paper Mario Bowser and the 1,000-Year Door Bowser is a treasure. Well, he's written so well. And yes, and Super Mario RPG, where he is a playable character.
And, I mean, I could extend that out to all of them. Every time he appears, he's, except for, I was going to say except for Color Splash, but he's still kind of the same character. He's just finally the main antagonist again, so he's a little bit more serious than he is in these earlier games, but he's still a total ditz.
He's a ditz. He's a little dumb, but he's got so much character and he's got like so much drive to do what he wants that he finds incredible ways. Like how he's so successful. Like you always stop and think after all of these Bowser segments, like how is he the king of Koopas? Like how did he get to this point? Because he's ridiculous. I think it's just because he's so powerful. But he's a dude.
What's really interesting about Bowser is apparently this is the first game outside of Japan where Bowser's explicit reason for kidnapping Peach is that he has a crush on her and wants to marry her.
The other games are just implied, or it's just because he's a baddie?
Yeah, I guess it's just earlier. I guess it was just he's just kind of a bad dude. So like, I'm gonna kidnap your regent and take over because that's what bad dudes do.
It's what I do.
But this is the first game, at least in other non-Japanese territories, where Bowser was like, nah, I really want to hook up with Peach, so I'm just going to kidnap her because that will get her to like me.
And that narrative is followed for most Mario games, I want to say, afterwards, right?
It's from what I was reading, it's like at least implied that that's been his motivation the whole time in Japan. So I think it was one of those things where they just finally decided, like, let's line everything up and it'll be consistent across the board. Although in 2020, that's kind of a weird narrative to have for a character.
It is, because Mario doesn't really have interest in Peach. Like, they're still not together. It's a weird triangle. It's just obfuscated on Odyssey too. Like, Mario Odyssey just made it even weirder.
But what is nice is this also gives Peach a chance to shine for the first time. And
oh, does she?
Does she ever?
Yeah.
I'll get into my thoughts about this in a second, but essentially you have these little short interstitials between each chapter where Peach is trying to escape from Bowser's castle. Now, I don't know if she just doesn't realize that she's like in space, or if she does. I have no idea what her plan is to get off of this castle should she escape. I'm kind of guessing that she doesn't have one because she's obviously not going to, so they didn't bother thinking up one. But regardless, it kind of strikes me as like Peach didn't think this one through.
She's a driven woman, you know? She wants to save her kingdom. So one way or another, she's going to find a way off.
She does have an exceptional devotion to her people.
Yeah, extremely exceptional.
Which is interesting because Peach is the only human other than the Mario brothers in the Mushroom Kingdom that we see with any regularity, and somehow she became the monarch of these mushroom people.
Princess Toadstool. Yeah, it's just one of those things you never question, right?
What happens when she dies? All her servants are toads. What? Everybody around her is a toad except for her. Where did she come from? And also, what happens when she dies? Like, is there a line of succession in this? She doesn't have children.
Well, Dean, when two toads love each other, I don't know. Maybe like every 100 years, a human woman is born from two toads, and she ascends the throne and leads her people. I don't know. I would love a backstory, but I think that a backstory would only ruin it. I kind of just like that we just never know. It just accepted.
They kind of gave us a backstory though in New Super Mario Brothers U.
Really? I actually never played that.
Not really, but in that game, there's a power up where Toadette can turn into Peach.
Ooh, hey, maybe I'm right.
Implying that Toadette, if you put a crown on a Toadette, she just becomes a human. So maybe this Peach is actually a Toadette.
Oh, maybe the power is in the crown.
Yeah, could be. I mean,
I
don't know if we've ever seen Peach without the crown before. I would have to think about that. I'm not sure.
Wouldn't that be an awesome narrative for a Mario game? Like Peach loses her crown and turns back into a normal Toad, and you find that the crown is actually what gives her power to turn human and then control this kingdom in some, I don't know, like omnipotent way. I don't know I'm not sure what the structure or what that monarchy looks like, but that would be really, really cool. I'm not going to go off on a tangent because I love going off on tangents on like newer game ideas, but something to think about.
I mean, something to think about is how fucked up that would actually be. Like all this time, Mario's been trying to bang a mushroom, dude.
And Bowser, don't forget about it.
Bowser's weird no matter how you look at it. That's just a big spiky turtle who's either trying to get with a human or a mushroom, regardless of, like, no matter how you slice it. Bowser's a weirdo.
He's a weirdo, yeah, and his writing in 64 is incredible. I'll never forget after the first chapter. It's either after the first or before the first. I believe the villain in the first chapter was the Koopa brothers, right?
Yes.
And it was 4 Koopas, different shell colors, right? It's kind of like Bowser's children. I think like Izzy, Dizzy, whatever their names are.
Yeah, so it was interesting because I was talking with my stream, my Twitch chat when I was playing through this part, and it's debatable whether or not the Koopa Bros are based off of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which are really popular at this time, or if they're based off of Super Sentai, or both.
Was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles really popular in Japan?
I mean, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was popular everywhere, but so they were at least cognizant of it. I don't think it was a phenomenon like it was here, though.
Okay. Still, the scene that I remember is they were up in Bowser's castle, and they were actually, I guess there's 2 scenes. Like they were talking with Bowser, and they showed Bowser like his secret move, and the camera just pans over to Bowser, and he's like, "Ooh, ooh!" He starts freaking out when they show them like their move, and he's like, "Go and get them now!" And then I think when they fail, they start talking to him again, and then he just like he gets so mad with them. He's like, "You idiots!" and like big bolded letters, and they fall over or something. It just they gave Bowser so much hilarious mega energy in these games that his dialogue is always so hilarious. It's always so good.
What kills me though is that he's so incredibly dumb that it makes you wonder how anybody looks at this guy and follows his orders. Like,
I think it's just because he's big and he's powerful. Because objectively he is powerful compared to Koopas,
right?
But I think that's the only reason. Like they just follow. Like it's a very rudimentary, tribalistic kind of Koopa, and hierarchy. They're just like, oh, here's the biggest Koopa. Like if another bigger Koopa came along, and all right, Bowser's stepping down.
That's the only thing I could think of. It must be like in Ocarina of Time, where like once every 100 years, this epic Koopa is born. Because Bowser is such an unbelievable idiot. And he's so awful to Cammy Koopa. Cammy would do anything for this big lug, and he just like talks trash to her every second he possibly can. Like only refers to her as an old hag and like yells at her and blames her for everything. And I'm just sitting there like, man, but really, your whole plan would have fallen apart at this point if not for her. Although, to be fair, there are several points where she's like wandering around, realizes that this is really stupid, voices such, and then just goes, screw it. Bowser told me to do something else, so it doesn't matter.
She has this realization, like, wait, I would do it differently. Maybe Cammy's not that old, because we don't really know how old Bowser is. He just looks kind of young, right? You would assume that, he's probably just as old as Cammy. It's just he's omnipotent and he's super powerful, so he looks younger. But maybe Cammy loves Bowser. Maybe it's it's her love of the King of Koopas, Bowser, that keeps her going and enduring this abuse.
Well, I mean, if we take all of the extensive Mario lore into account, the Magic Koopas, specifically like Kamek and Cammy, raised Bowser and Bowser Jr., so it would stand to reason that they have like a motherly love for him.
So he's just an ass.
Yeah, he's a total douchebag, but so is Bowser Jr.
Yeah, not that he's worse, because he is. I would say like Bowser Jr. is probably more intelligent than Bowser, right?
He's just really childish. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's worse. He's annoying and he's malicious
and intelligent,
and he's
But I mean, besides going off on an unbelievable tangent about Cammy and Kamek and all of them, what are your feelings on like the Peach interstitials as a whole?
Love them. It gave narrative to Peach that previously didn't exist. Super Mario RPG had some, but I think that it gave a lot, like it showed like Peach isn't this helpless, I can't defend myself, I'm so useless, I'm just a girl kind of thing in the original Mario games. And of course, you can only give a NES game so much story. I understand why Peach was just, I don't know, she had like 3 lines of dialogue probably in the whole game, but like you really gave Peach an identity as someone who is, she's strong, she's independent, like you understand kind of why she is leading this kingdom, she just doesn't quit, she doesn't stop. And even more so on Thousand Year Door, I think. Both games have similar breakaways with Peach. I love both of them. I love Peach in both games.
So I would once again give the edge to this game slightly, but only for one specific reason. And that reason is my favorite character in the whole game. It comes right after the Shy Guy toy box level, which, by the way, just as a short aside, the final boss in the Shy Guy toy box, General Shy Guy, or General Guy, I think he's called, is incredible. Yeah. Like, that is such a great character. I love Shy Guys. Shy Guys are my second or third favorite Mario character as a whole, but that boss is absolutely phenomenal. But the Peach interstitial that you get just after that leads Peach to find what is without doubt not only my favorite character in Paper Mario, very possibly my favorite Shy Guy of all time in any form of media.
He's got him.
My man Gourmet Guy.
What a champ.
Gourmet Guy is described as, and I quote, a permanently hungry Shy Guy.
It's so relatable.
So what do you do for this Shy Guy? So a regular Shy Guy, if we imagine that Peach is like a normal sized woman, like maybe, let's say that she's like 5'10", yeah? A Shy Guy is maybe like 2.5, 3 feet tall.
Oh yeah.
Gourmet Guy is easily 6'5" and 3 times the width of Peach, who's
He's like the Bowser of Shy Guys, like he's not evil or a king or anything, but like he's the 1 in 100 years Shy Guy.
Not only is he not evil, when you come across this guy whose job it is to be like, oh shit, here's Peach, let me call in the guards so they can take him back. He's like, whatever, man. Like, you can do whatever you want. Can you just bake me a cake, though? And so you go off on this tangent to bake this, and I quote, permanently hungry Shy Guy a cake. And if you fail, I actually didn't fail, but I found this out later. If you fail, he eats it anyway and then just goes, hey, man, can you just make me another cake? Like, that one wasn't very good.
I'm reading a quote here that I don't remember because I don't think I failed it, but I guess there's a quote. I'm assuming if you fail, he says, where do you learn to cook? Truck driving school? What?
Like most characters in this game, he's kind of a douchebag in that way.
Yeah.
But it's so charming. Like, this man just wants a great cake. That's all he wants. And don't we all just want a great cake?
We just want a great cake. I love how the Shy Guy mask even is fat on him, because it's a mask. It's not part of their physique. Like they're under their cloak and everything. Now, I always assumed that the Shy Guys just had a mask on. Am I wrong?
But no, yeah. The white part is not their face. That's a mask.
Yeah. Even his mask is fat. I love that. It's got big old cheeks.
We'll actually come to that a little bit later because that specific trait of Shy Guys is addressed in Thousand Year Door. Yes, in my least favorite chapter, but we'll come to that. But yeah, if you guys are listening to this and you haven't played Paper Mario 64 or you just don't remember Gourmet Guy, do yourself a favor and look this guy up. Gourmet Guy is incredible.
He's an
11 out of 10 character. So I think that pretty much does it for the original Paper Mario. Was there anything else that you wanted to touch on before we move on to Thousand Year Door?
No. I mean, I would recommend Paper Mario to anybody that I would ever meet, regardless of their history or what they've played before. I would recommend Paper Mario 64 to a dog or to a cat or to anything living, because I think the game the game's incredible, and it's one of those like, once in a decade, type of title.
Yeah, I would generally agree with that. Paper Mario, especially if you're thinking about getting into Paper Mario, at this point, I feel confident in saying don't do what I did. Go back, play Paper Mario 64 first, then experience the games that came after them. And if you can, really go all the way back to Super Mario RPG, play that, then continue going on from there. You'll be greatly rewarded for doing so.
I would say Super Mario RPG doesn't hold up nearly as well as Paper Mario on 64, though, right?
No, I agree with that, but it holds up well enough, and it's short enough. I think that game is only like 20 hours or something like that. That even if you're not super into RPGs or it doesn't quite hold up for you, I think that it works well enough that it's worth going back and experiencing, just so you have that context of the things that come later that are clearly derived from those earlier games. But with that, we can move on to Thousand Year Door. But I do want to mention before we do that in between this time, Paper Mario on the N64 came out in February of 2001. And Thousand Year Door came out in 2004. But in 2003, a totally different team named Alpha Dream came out with a Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga game on the Game Boy Advance. And this is yet another series in the Mario RPG type of games. This would make 3. So now we have Super Mario RPG, Paper Mario, and Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga. Mario Story, if you're playing the Japanese version, I suppose. And this is not something that we're going to go in depth on here, although it's certainly something that we could touch on in a different episode, because I do have a lot of love for this game specifically and would love to go and experience the other games in this series. But it's worth noting that at this time, Nintendo had established kind of a back and forth of every year or so coming out with a Paper Mario game, then a Mario and Luigi game, then a Paper Mario game, and a Mario Luigi game, which we would see going on from this point forward. And at this point that we're recording this, Alpha Dream has filed for bankruptcy and will maybe be gone forever, which is a complete shame. I really love the Mario and Luigi games. And at this point, unless they make a dramatic right turn with this new Paper Mario game coming out, might be the end of Mario RPGs as we know it.
Let's hope not. Surprisingly, and I don't know why this happened, I missed out on all of the Mario and Luigi games. All of them. Never played them. And it's ridiculous because it is absolutely in my cup of tea. Like, it should have been in my repertoire from day one. I had the consoles. I had every ability to play them. I knew, even back then, part of me knew that I would love them, but I still just did not play them. I don't know why. It's right up my alley. I know I would love them.
So let's do this. Let's reconvene. We can talk after the show here, and we'll set it up for you. We'll get it done, and then maybe we can have a follow-up episode where we look at the Mario and Luigi games.
Yeah, I would definitely love to replay them.
Cool. But for now, let's just notate that Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga exists. It's a phenomenal game, but the year after that came out, we come to what many, including yourself, believe to be the absolute best Paper Mario game and quite possibly the best Mario RPG, if not the best RPG. That is Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door for the Nintendo GameCube, originally released in July of 2004 in Japan, and 3 months later in October 2004 for North America. So talk to me about Thousand Year Door, man. What was your experience with that like?
Yeah, cue angelic atmospheric music as if something is coming down from the heavens and a beam of light is entering my GameCube. Because that was my experience. Thousand Year Door blew me away, man. Because I was a GameCube fanboy. I had a GameCube. I didn't start out with a PS2 really, because I was already just on the Nintendo train. I got a PS2 a little bit later on in its life, but GameCube for a while, playing Smash Brothers Melee on that, playing Thousand Year Door, using the Game Boy Advance adapter to play more Pokemon than I could even shake a stick at. Just loving it. Loving the console, love the GameCube. I brought it to my friend's house. Very, very endearing moment for me. Very endearing time. And a lot of good memories. Thousand Year Door is definitely with that. So I had played Paper Mario 64 before I played Thousand Year Door. And I already loved 64. And moving to Thousand Year Door, it was everything that I could have asked for. It was a graphical update. It looks sharper. It still holds up easily holds up today. And is very, very simple to go back and play. Like, it doesn't feel dated. The dialogue in it was great. The side quests, a little bit of side quests in it were great. Luigi is incredible. I love Luigi is such an incredible character in this game. All the companions are great. I mean, I'll sit here for another hour just saying what was great, because I don't really have too many negatives about the game itself. It's one of my favorite games of all time, and I have a lot of good memories.
So for me, you know what's funny about this game for me is, much like yourself, I was a huge GameCube fan. Like, I had a GameCube day one. I was such a big GameCube fan. Then I came back to my GameCube a couple of years after the Wii came out, and I just wanted to play something. I don't even remember what it was. But I went to go turn on my GameCube, and my GameCube was dead. I don't know what happened, but it was just totally dead. And I freaked out so badly that I got up, drove down to my local GameStop, and bought another one.
Right away.
Without even really considering what other options I had, trying to fix it. No, to hell with that. I need a GameCube, and I need it right now. And I just bought another one. I played so many hours of like Smash Bros. And F-Zero GX and all these great games, Zelda, Wind Waker, and Twilight Princess, all these great games on GameCube. And yet somehow I played Mario Sunshine and skipped over Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door. And what's really interesting to me is I had an N64 before this, and I skipped Paper Mario on that game, on that system too. It's just something about the Paper Mario series in general has just evaded my vision until you had me sit down and play this game last November, I think it was. I just never really, it was on my radar more recently because of all this hullabaloo about remastered Thousand Year Door and all this kind of stuff. But before that, I was maybe like passingly aware that Paper Mario even existed, much less that it was something I needed to go back and play. So I had none of that experience with this game. Absolutely none. And what a shame.
Yeah, no, your childhood suffered, definitely.
Yeah, I don't know about that. But it is a shame. Like, this is a game that I really wish that I had played when it was current, because this game is so good that missing out on it back then. Like there was a hole that needed to be filled, and I didn't even know it until I played this game. Like that's how I'll put it.
You probably would have just like it would have been one of your classics if you played it back then when it came out, right? Like it would have been one of those things that defined your gaming interests.
100%. I mean, my whole life I've been into RPGs and I've been into Nintendo. So a Nintendo RPG, it's just unbelievable that this never. I played. You know how many RPGs that I played on GameCube, much less other Nintendo consoles, and yet somehow I didn't play I played Mario and Luigi, and I still never played this game. It's mind blowing to me. I can't believe it, but I've since rectified that, and I have played this game. And kind of like we were alluding to earlier, I would say that even though this is not even my second favorite Paper Mario game, it is, as far as RPGs in the Paper Mario, which, I mean, frankly, is only 2. We can be generous and throw Super Mario RPG in there, but it is only like 2 games. But it is the most feature-rich and complete of those games. Like this, I totally understand why people feel like this is the best Paper Mario game, even though I fundamentally disagree for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, and I think it is the best Paper Mario game. Now, obviously, I'm jaded and a little biased, and I don't have the exposure to the other games to really make a legitimate opinion here. I didn't play any other Paper Mario games besides 64 and Thousand Year Door. I have the consensus of the players behind me, so I've just always known Thousand Year Door was the best because majority just reinforced that. And they still do. Majority absolutely prefers Thousand Year Door. And I think the reviews also kind of got me to not play the other ones, because every time a new Paper Mario game came out, I didn't buy it day one. I just read the reviews and it was like, oh, still not as good as Thousand Year Door. I'm like, oh, guess I'm missing this title. Let's move on. And I wish I didn't do that, especially with Super Paper Mario. I wish I would have actually played that one.
Still can. Like
maybe
once this plague has passed us by, you can borrow my copy and play it. You still have your Wii, right? I think I've seen it at your place before.
I do miraculously still have my Wii. And I actually could replay I actually still do have the original Paper Mario loaded on my Wii. I guess if I really wanted to play Paper Mario the 64 again, I could boot up my Wii and play it. If I had an inkling to do so. But let's just, come on, Nintendo, just put N64 games on your Nintendo Online subscription already. Let's do it. Or release an N64
That's
mini. Come on.
Really want.
Let's do something. Let's do something here. There's a huge market.
I'm going to keep it 100%. Like if they drop a N64 classic like they did with the Nintendo and Super Nintendo, and I can dump whatever games that I want onto it, I'll be buying 3 of them.
Yeah. And if they release like different colors, like if I can get like my atomic purple N64, they probably won't do this, but if they do, then man, I'd lose it. That would be a pre-order for me, easy.
They could make it turd colored and I wouldn't care. Like
they could just release it as the Hey You Pikachu version and I would still buy it.
If they did that, they would sell even more units.
I never understood that game. Even when I saw the billions of commercials all over, Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network for it, I never was interested in getting it.
That's good for you because that game's terrible. So Thousand Year Door. So I guess first and foremost, let's talk about the story, right? So this one does take place after Paper Mario on the N64, although the events of Paper Mario 64 don't matter at all. There's some light referencing to that material that's in here and some cool little Easter eggs and things like that, but generally speaking, it's totally irrelevant.
Yeah.
And essentially what happens is one day Mario's just chilling at the crib with Luigi, who never does anything because he's the worst brother in all of recorded media. And until this game came along anyway, we'll get to that. Oh boy, when we get to that. And this letter essentially says, hey, Mario, I need you to come to this previously totally unknown magical place called Rogueport. And so he does. Like, there's really nothing else put to that, but he just does. And so
He's got nothing else going on.
I mean, like,
Why
he
not?
lives to go save Princess Peach from whatever she happens to be doing at that time. I'm not sure how this man makes a living or survives in any way, shape, or form, but regardless, he's like, all right, listen, Luigi, I'm just gonna bounce, dude. I could take you with me because you could theoretically be helpful, but go to hell. And so he jumps in the ship with Peach's butler, and they go to Rogueport. And first and foremost, I just want to say Rogueport is a phenomenal setting. And I say that not even because of anything specific that the game does with Rogueport, because really it's just like a port town. But I remember every corner, nook, and cranny of Rogueport. I know exactly what it looks like. I can see it in my mind. And that's more than I can say about any of the other Paper Mario games, even though I played them all more recently than this one.
So they did a really good job of treating Rogueport. This is a lesson in great game design, because Rogueport, it wasn't just a landing point for your beginning. It's a hub. It really is. So it's a jumping off point to every other location in the game. And they do it intelligently. They do it methodically. When you unlock new abilities, which we didn't even talk about that yet, by the way, the whole mechanics around the abilities, we'll circle back to it, I guess. But as you unlock new abilities, new areas open, interesting things happen, which change the layout. The town gets a little bit bigger every chapter because you get to a new area and they're all unique, and you can get to different areas in different ways underground. It's such an incredible hub city, and I don't know of another hub city that did something as memorable as Rogueport did for me. It's got such a great design.
So I do, and I guess we'll just get started right now, because Rogueport is Toad Town from Paper Mario 64. Like, let's just be real here for a second. It's totally designed. It has its own very cool aesthetic. Like, when you first show up in Toad Town or in Rogueport, you're having a conversation with Toadsworth, Peach's butler, Toadsworth, and you can see this guy in the background is getting mugged actively while you're having this conversation, which is such a great storytelling conceit. Like, it sets up the area and the ambiance of this place so well. I mean, that's not even to mention the fact that you get jumped by like 100 of the game's bad guys as soon as you get there too, trying to help somebody. And then once you get past that, which is a matter of just walking through the crowd because they're really stupid, you go to the next screen, and then as you're talking to Toadsworth, some guy's just getting mugged. And that comes back around later in the game when you do a side mission for that guy. So it has a lot of really cool touches like that, where if you paid attention, you can benefit from it later on.
Yeah. And to your point, Toad Town being a hub, the games are very similar to begin with, but I don't remember Toad Town anywhere near as much as Rogueport.
I mean, I do, because I just played that a couple of months ago, but I totally understand that, because Toad Town is a place that you see all the time, albeit not as much as you do in Paper Mario 64, but you're very familiar with the idea of like these toad-topped houses that you see when you're playing through, Mario Bros. 3 or something like that. And it's just toads, like you have a couple of odd characters here and there, like Tasty, who will cook for you, which we didn't even touch on cooking, but she's a version of that character is in Thousand Year Door as well. You have the postal carrier, paratrooper in the post office, and you have these little oddball characters here and there, but predominantly Toad Town is home to toads, as you might expect. It's right around Peach's Castle in the Mushroom Kingdom, so you would expect to find a lot of toads there. But as a consequence of that, it doesn't feel as alive and vibrant as Rogueport does, because Rogueport is covered in like wanted posters. Things are beaten up, and you can see like the plaster falling off and the bricks underneath the buildings in some places, and you have all kinds of different characters all over the place. It's not predominantly any one species of character from the Mario games. It's all different characters, some of which are totally made up for this game. It's super unique and original and memorable, even though structurally it's just the same as Toad Town was. It serves the same purpose. There's also an underground, just like there was in Paper Mario 64. So all of those things are very similar, but the way it's executed is much more refined and works a lot better, at least in my opinion, in Thousand Year Door. I say at least in my opinion, but I think almost everybody would agree with that.
I'm looking at a picture of Rogueport just to get the memory back of it all, and I forgot there's just a noose in the middle of town just hanging out. It's very different from Mario games, and you mentioned brand new characters and races and stuff like that, like the crows, like the crow people that are there. I have no idea what they're called, but I think they're unique to Thousand Year Door.
I think so. I'm not aware of another game that they're in. They might be, but if they are, I'm not sure. So, like I was saying before, you have Tasty in Paper Mario 64, who's Zesty in Thousand Year Door. You have characters like Charlatan, who is around the item shop. You have the guy, the traveling badge salesman that's there. The guy with the fez on top and the gigantic bushy mustache, it's like bigger than his head. Just these really crazy characters. And there's some Goombas wandering around because we're not in Toad Town anymore. There are mice, which I think they're just like mousers maybe, but this is the first time that you've ever been able to interact with a character like that, so that's really neat. But anyway, the point is that Rogueport is just a very lived-in area, and it feels very unique and interesting for that reason. So I guess, like you brought it up earlier, so I guess this would be as good a time as any to kind of circle back and to kind of talk about how these games work. Because we've gone through the entirety of Paper Mario 64. We're starting on Paper Mario 1000 Year Door. Maybe at some point we should talk about how they work. But essentially, it's just a turn-based RPG with some light action RPG mechanics in there. So, for example, if you are playing as Mario, you have the ability to jump on enemies using your boots or smash them with a hammer. And when you play Thousand Year Door specifically, you have the ability to do what are called stylish moves. And if you do them just right, you can get additional hits for more damage and keep going like that. Now, all of this can be augmented with the badge system, which, even though we didn't mention in Paper Mario 64, this comes from Paper Mario 64 directly. And this is, without doubt, I would say, the most complex and interesting part of the Paper Mario duo of RPGs, because you can make such a diverse and interesting mix of abilities on your character based on what badges you do or don't put on them, including boosting your health, boosting the points that you have to cast spells and such, or give yourself totally new abilities that will bypass defense, for example, all those kinds of things. But really, that's it in Paper Mario 64. Now, Thousand Year Door takes that a step further, and it gives you the ability to plead to the audience or cheer to the audience, I think it's called in Thousand Year. Is it cheering in Thousand Year Door?
I don't think it's called cheering, but yeah, there's a mechanic to, bring more people in and pump the crowd up, which then raises your star power.
Right, and star power you get as you rescue this game's protagonists. Well, not protagonists, but what would you call them? Supporting characters, maybe?
I mean, it's a mixed bag.
It's a real mixed bag, guys. I don't know. Well, regardless, you can recover the stars in this game and crystal stars, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's what the stars are. Yeah. Is it crystal stars or is what you're ultimately going for? Like there's 7 of them, and you have to collect them at every chapter.
Right. Yeah, I probably worded that wrong. That's what I was looking for. Anyway, so you get these crystal stars that grant you different abilities. Now, immediately, I'm going to be honest, I have a huge problem with the crystal star system. And the reason I have a huge problem with it is that the cost to value ratio of most of the abilities that you get just isn't there. For 90% of the game, I use like the first 2 abilities that you get in this game.
I guarantee that you probably use the earthquake one most.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And the very first one that you get, which is the, oh God, why can't I remember what it's called? But
Sweet Treat.
Yeah. Yep. I use that one to supplement healing because healing items are frankly not common in this game, really. You have them, they're around, but like they're not super duper common. So I ended up falling back on that a lot. But other than that, like the next few that you get, I was just like, nah, I'm not going to waste my star power on this. But also, like, it takes long enough to heal up your star power that I found myself in that mode that I'm sure a lot of gamers can relate to, where you're just like, I don't really want to use this because what if I need it? And so I just kind of hoarded that.
Yeah, you just hoard it.
Yeah, so I mean, I didn't feel like the star points and the crystal star system was super great for that reason. I don't know how you felt about it.
I mean, I loved it. Both games, Paper Mario and The Thousand Year Door, they both had a star system. They had moves, and they had a very similar moves between both games, but you use some more than others. Earth Tremor, I'm looking at a list right now because I forgot the exact names of them, but the second one you get is Earth Tremor. That one's invaluable.
Especially late game.
Especially late game because you're constantly fighting multiple enemies. Art Attack is pretty nice.
Yeah, but you get that one late game, so
yes, you're in chapter 5 or 6 by the time you get that one, and then the very last one is extremely powerful, but it's so late game that you really don't ever have a reason to use it frequently. You know, it just maybe you'll use it on the final boss if you want to, but you get it after beating the final chapter, and then you're pretty much going right to the end game.
Yeah, exactly, and
then it uses so many star points, like a disproportionate amount of star points compared to the other ones, that it's better to just use like Earth Tremor 3 times versus using Supernova or something.
Correct. So, I mean, I definitely feel like that's a fault with this game, but it definitely didn't detract from my enjoyment of the game. But something that did detract from my enjoyment of the game, we're going to get to real shortly here. So, Chapter 1, you kind of, like we were talking about, you show up in Rogueport looking for Peach. Peach is now gone. We have to find Peach. What the hell is going on? And so Mario goes on this adventure collecting crystal stars to prevent them from opening the Thousand Year Door. It's going to end Rogueport and end the world and all this kind of stuff. Basic Mario stuff. So, Chapter 1, we go to the castle and we battle Hooktail. And we go through what is ostensibly like Koopa Village, right? Petalburg.
Yeah.
And that's where we meet Koops. And I know you have a lot of love for Koops. Talk to me about Koops, man.
Koops he's such an endearing character. He's, constantly down on himself. I think the Koops' storyline is trying to find his father because his father went to actually fight Hooktail because Hooktail's terrorizing and eating the Koopas. But he is humble. He's one of those shy Koopas. He's not charismatic. So he really, pardon the pun, he comes out of his shell after joining your party, and especially late game, finds his confidence. It's like he's got the most character development, well, maybe the only character development out of all the companions that you get in the game. So I've always really liked Koops a lot. And he's just incredibly powerful. He can attack multiple enemies, very strong hits. He can get knocked on his shell if certain enemies, I think if they just hit him, he gets knocked over on his shell. But if you're good with your blocks and your timings, you can usually avoid it.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth noting that I kind of glossed over it, but at this point, you would also have Goombella, who is a little female Goomba who wants to be an archaeologist type of thing.
Yeah, she's a little firecracker.
Yeah, she sure is. She's kind of a mixture of Bombette and Goombario from the first game, I would say.
Yeah.
And between the two, I think Koops is certainly superior in battle. I mean, the only real use that Goombella has in battle, in my opinion, is the Tattle ability, which gives you all the information on your opponent, their HP, defense, attack, things like that. And it gives you a funny little blurb about each one. So it's worth doing in that regard, in that it gives you some more lore, it gives you something to chuckle about while you're in the middle of this battle. Even the bosses will give you something funny while you're getting your head smashed in. But other than that, I mean, Goombella is fine. Koops, however, is invaluable. I mean, I think probably I use Koops more than any other ally in the game, but he's not my favorite. And we will get to that because my favorite is actually possibly one of the more useless ones, but maybe not everybody's favorite. So after we invade the castle, we beat up Hooktail, we find out that Coop's daddy is no more. And from there, Koops decides that he's going to be a real Koopa hero and then go on with Mario anyway so he could be second fiddle.
Really takes it well seeing the skeleton of a Koopa just there, right? Kind of surprisingly, invigorated, or just finds his momentum after seeing that. It doesn't completely deteriorate and break down.
Surprisingly well. And it becomes kind of a running gag as you're going through this castle as he keeps finding these skeletons of dead Koopas. And he's like, oh my God, this was my dad for real, though, this time.
Yeah.
Only to find out when you actually finally defeat Hooktail, no, he's just been chilling inside Hooktail's stomach this whole time.
Somehow alive.
Which is a real testament to the kind of hilarious story writing that they do in this game. You meet, oh God, what is his name? Now I can't remember. The old Koopa in the town.
Oh, like the really hard of hearing, forgetful Koopa that's there.
Yeah.
I do not. Oh, Croup. That's his name.
Croup?
Yeah, Mayor Croup.
All right, I'll roll with that.
That's his name. He's got huge bushy eyebrows that cover his entire eye, and he's pretty great.
And I mean, he can never remember Mario's name, so he's always messing that up, which is hilarious.
Calling him Murphy or something.
Yeah. Murphy, is that you? No, it's Mario. Okay, Murphy. So you have some touching moments with Koops very early on, which I think makes him more endearing than most of the other characters because, especially at this point, you've met Goombella, who's just kind of really headstrong character that wants to go with you and do her own thing, which is cool. She's a nice character, but she's not exactly endearing in that way. Koops, however, goes to slay Hooktail because he presumptively killed his father and is terrorizing the town. And he wants to do this favor for all the Koopas in the village and at the behest of Croup and to protect his girlfriend Koopy Koo. And it really makes him into this heroic nerd of a character, which I think is probably relatable to a lot of people that played this game. Except for being the hero part. A lot of nerds don't know anything about that. But after you slay Hooktail and move on, we go to what I found out a lot of people consider to be the worst chapter in the game, which is mind-boggling to me when we get to the next chapter. But the Great Boggly Tree. How do you feel about the Great Boggly Tree, man?
So I like the chapter. It's got a really beautiful aesthetic. The main inhabitants of the Great Boggly Tree are the Punies. They
sure are.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think most people just don't enjoy it because you're really shepherding around these Punies the entire time. I liked that the whole plot was just the X-Nauts, which, a quick sidebar, this game story is not just Bowser doing anything significant. One of the largest charms of this entire game is Bowser is always catching up to what's actually going on because Princess Peach is once again kidnapped, but not by Bowser this time. She's kidnapped by a group of, I guess they're aliens. They're called X-Nauts, and their leader, which is Sir Grotus, he kidnapped Peach for reasons we'll get into later, but he has her on, you find out, the moon. And she's trapped there with a super intelligent computer, and there's a lot of great dialogue there. That's where Peach's moments and her little interludes in between the chapters and her standouts happen, are her being captured on the moon. It's very similar to Paper Mario 64. She's captured, and your parts are just her breaking out and trying to find a way out or communicate with Mario in any way. And the way she communicates is interfacing with this computer to send emails.
Yes.
But the computer with a sentient computer, which I'm sure we'll talk about more. But Bowser is trying to actually save Princess Peach. from being captured, and he's kind of upset that someone else captured her. That's his whole motivation. He's just pissed off that someone had the gall to capture Princess Peach. That's his thing.
Yep.
And Bowser's parts in this game, when you switch over and you play Bowser, you play in a traditional 2D plane, as if you're playing like a traditional Mario game, like on the SNES or Super Nintendo, the NES or Super Nintendo, excuse me, and you just barrel through everything. Pipes and walls and enemies, and you just destroy everything in your path, and they're some of the greatest moments in the game.
Yeah, Bowser is certainly my second favorite character in this game. My favorite character in this game is heads and shoulders above everybody else, but we'll get to him later. So I also want to put in a slight note here. With the X-Nauts, their leader is Sir Grotus. But Sir Grotus doesn't do a whole lot. Like, he yells at his minions to go do his bidding, and that's really all you see of him until the end. And even then, you don't get much more than that. Who you really interact with, and who's the real star of this X-Naut show, is Lord Crump.
Yeah.
Lord Crump is an incredible villain. He very much takes the place of Bowser in being a bumbling idiot of a villain.
Yeah.
But he's so good. He's so good. He actually shows up in chapter 2 in this giant like paper mache cardboard mech of a thing that he tries to beat the hell out of you with. And he fails miserably, of course, because Mario. But he will do absolutely anything to get these crystal stars before Mario for reasons that don't really matter. But yeah, I mean, Lord Crump is probably the best bad guy in the first two Paper Mario games, I think.
He's hilarious. He's got a classic bumbling minions that are constantly making mistakes. He himself is short-sighted, compulsive, and hilarious, constantly trying to use new technologies to overpower Mario or one-up him. I'm looking at the mech's name that he was in. It's Magnus von Grapple. That's the name of the mech. Of course it is. But yeah, no, he's a classic character. There's a lot of moving parts in Paper Mario, a lot of different storylines, because you have a main storyline with Princess Peach. You have Sir Grotus's intentions and his overarching reason why he did all of this, and he's kind of like Sir Grotus, which is the leader of the X-Nauts, is kind of the orchestrator for everything in the game. You have Bowser, which has his own independent and usually non-intersecting story with everything else going on, because Bowser's always he's always showing up after everything's happened, right? So he's always one step behind everything. You have Grotus, who's constantly on Mario's tail the entire time. And then not only that, you have each individual companion with their own type of story, some of them more in depth than others. Of course, Koops is a great story. Vivian, who is in chapter 4 or 5, we'll talk about a little bit later. Miss Mouse has a great story that you see. She's a returning character. But there's so many intersecting and parallel things going on. And Luigi miraculously has his own story in this game, which is one of my favorite parts of it. It's just the writing, going back to it again, you have to praise them. It's unyielding. There is so much narrative in this game. It never gets dull. Never.
So speaking of companions, the companion that you get in chapter 2 is Flurry, who is
Madame Flurry.
Controversial to say the least, but talk to me about Flurry. How do you feel about Flurry as a character, as a companion?
She's all right. She's all right. I mean, Flurry, I never found her abilities to be that useful. I never really used her very much. Every companion gives you a new way to interface with the world and gives you a new way to open things up. Goombella has her tattle ability, and she can give you information about what you should do next. Koops has his shell ability. He can launch forward and interact with buttons or grab things in the distance that you can't get to. Madame Flurry can blow pieces of the world that are kind of torn like pages. She can reveal them, opening up secret paths or areas in the game that you previously couldn't get to. So she has her place, and you use her ability pretty frequently. Especially I remember her ability directly gets you to the next part in Rogueport. I remember there's a specific slot, but she also allows you to get a lot of cool star pieces and or shards and get a lot of other stuff. I don't know. She's just a kind of underwhelming. I enjoyed her story. She has a lot of attitude, but I never really used her that much.
I would agree. And I think a lot of people kind of share the same sentiment that Flurry seems like a great concept on paper, but wasn't really executed in any interesting way that people really gravitated towards. I think Flurry was easily my least favorite companion in the game. And I think she's also the only one that I didn't fully upgrade her abilities on. So
I don't think I ever did either. Yeah.
That says something about her usefulness, but nevertheless, so you get Flurry kind of early on, this kind of out of work actress type of character who's a wind spirit, they describe her as, and she can like gust enemies away from battle and use her big operatic fat lady singing body to smash enemies, even though she's a ghost, which doesn't really make any sense, but we'll just roll with that.
Yeah, her initial move is body slam, which okay.
But Flurry is kind of the envoy to the Punies, who otherwise don't like humans and don't want to interact with them in any way. And you kind of use her to blow away a piece of paper that's blocking the neon sign that says entrance to the Punies' home that's in this giant tree. The Great Boggly Tree, as it were. And you go in and you find out that the Punies are being attacked by these, like, what would you say they are? Like wasp-like creatures?
I can't remember as good as you'll probably, because you played it more frequently than me. I don't remember what they're getting attacked by.
Yeah, I would call them wasp-like. I don't know that it's ever really explicitly stated what kind of creature they really are, but nevertheless, the X-Nauts have kind of instigated this war between the Punies and their kind of arch nemesis species that's this like fly wasp thing. And so you have to rescue the Elder Puny and Punio and Puny from this prison that they end up in. And then once you do that, you kind of get this army of 100 Punies that follow you around and beat the hell out of these wasp-like creatures.
And that's usually the part that people don't love, because it is kind of cumbersome dragging them around and they're falling, because you're not really platforming, but you have to maneuver 100 Punies behind you through these tight corridors sometimes, and they can just fall off the edge of places and you have to go get them.
Yeah, and it's funny because like I understand that it happened to me once or twice where they would like fall off a little bit, but it only affected me one time. So it was hardly something that I would call problematic where I would knock points off the chapter for it. In fact, I would say that chapter 2 might well be my favorite chapter in the whole game.
That is not a popular sentiment at all. That is not a popular opinion. I think chapter 2 is fun. It's great. I think the largest thing about chapter 2 that stands out to me is the final battle between the Punies and their and that other species that's there. And also just the aesthetics. Right. I think if they didn't choose the aesthetic styling with the Great Boggly Tree in chapter 2 being this weird noir black and white dominant type of styling, it would have been largely forgettable, and I think it would have made it a lot worse. I'm glad that they chose to really change it up.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worth noting that aesthetics can play a big role in a lot of these chapters in that same way. Like, I think the flower fields in Mario 64 would be largely forgettable if not for the aesthetics, for example.
Yeah.
But that notwithstanding, I really like the Great Boggly Tree. I think that even if it weren't my favorite, which is still debatable, I would have to really think about that, I think. But I do really like it, and I don't think that the negatives outweigh the positives here. Before we get to chapter 3, because man, will we get to chapter 3. I guess this is a really good point to kind of talk about Peach and kind of the interstitials that you go through with Peach. So kind of like you were talking about earlier, Peach has been kidnapped. She doesn't know where she is at this point. But spoiler alert, she's on the moon in the X-Naut secret base. And she's supposed to interact with this AI computer to find out Mario's weaknesses and just kind of generally help the X-Nauts because she had the map and they want the map so that they can get the crystal stars and all this. As it turns out, this... First of all, this is just weighing on my mind. I just want to get it out before I forget to mention it. Every single time that you take control of Peach in this moon base hideout, you have the option for some reason to go into the other room and take a shower with Peach. And not only that, but the first time you do it, it's implied that this AI computer is watching her the whole time. And it's this really weird, creepy scene that the game gives you the ability to replay whenever the hell you feel like for some reason. And I have no idea what purpose it serves.
I don't remember either. I just remember it being a thing.
It's definitely a thing. If it serves a greater purpose for some reason, I don't know what it is. I don't know if the implication is like this computer saw a naked girl for the first time and he was like, oh my God, this is what I've always wanted in my life. But it's super weird, man. I just don't get it. I don't know if it's like one of those, well, you know, Japan type of things, or if there's something that I'm just missing, but big yikes for me, dog.
Big yikes. Yeah. And you know, this AI computer just kind of, you know, like you mentioned, falls in love with Peach and kind of disobeys Sir Grotus, who made him. And that's really what drives the success of the story ultimately, is that this AI is faulty and it just kind of falls for Peach. And Peach is able to send messages to Mario's DS, right? He had to get a DS, which received emails or something.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, cool. I don't remember that feature. I don't know. Maybe your DS did something different than mine.
I definitely was not getting emails through DS.
I don't remember. Yeah, I don't remember getting emails at all. But that story was always great. And it's something that I remember a game doing at that time, like with rampant AI falling in love and, you know, defying its master, Sir Grotus, in the end. And just really, really great. Now, Peach, she was more kind of independent in the first Paper Mario 64. She was out to save her kingdom. She was trying to escape. She was doing everything that she can to work around and to, you know, find ways out. And this one, she just kind of was following along with what the AI let her do because she was pretty well contained. So a little bit less of an independent woman type story and more of a Peach just unbeknowingly taking advantage of this AI's love because she doesn't really acknowledge it too much. She's just kind of ignorant to it all happening.
Although there's a really great scene early on where Tech, the computer, essentially says something to the effect of like, I like you, Peach. And she's like, what did you just say to me? You're a computer. What the hell are you talking about? Do you even know what that means?
Yes, I think that's exactly what she said. I think I remember that speech bubble, but really great breakouts with Peach again. And that's part of that parallel storylines going on between Peach, Bowser, Grodius, all the X-Nauts, Clump, Mario, Luigi. Why don't we talk about Luigi?
We'll get to Luigi. I have a lot to say about Luigi.
Okay. I love Luigi.
But yeah, this is when Tech asks Peach to dance, which is super weird.
Oh, yeah.
She makes a hologram that she dances with just so he can experience dancing. And once that ends, we kind of get back to Rogueport. And then we get to my favorite two NPC characters in the game. We have to talk to this man, Frankie, and his girlfriend, Francesca, to get them to come back to Don Pianta.
Oh, yes.
So that we can get in his good graces and get a ticket to Glitzville. And
it's like a little mini Romeo and Juliet segment.
Yeah, Don Pianta is running like the Palm Tree Mafia, and his son Frankie just wants to go on a honeymoon vacation type of thing with his girlfriend Francesca and marry her. And he just cannot cope with this. Like Frankie is actually one of Don Pianta's bodyguards, and Francesca is his daughter. And he's just kind of like, how could you do this to me, Frankie? I thought we were boys, man.
They're so Italian. It's incredible. And just to go with something we said previously, the diversity of Rogueport, those are the characters and the races from Super Mario Sunshine. I forgot what they're called already.
I can find out.
I think they're named after the island, right?
Delfino?
No, they're definitely not named after the island, but it's those weird tropical Hawaiian Samoan type creatures. Piantas?
Yeah, he's Don Pianta of the Pianta species, apparently.
Okay, so just something which you don't even know they're there until you actually go to that point and need to head to Glitzville. But that story was really, really cool. Something very, very, very different. I mean, you could have gotten that Glitzville ticket anyway, but it's pretty refreshing to go through the whole little storyline trying to get his daughter back and all of that. It's just great writing.
Yeah,
just great
what's
stuff.
really interesting to me is you go through this kind of side quest where you have to go to the shop in town and buy items in a really specific order in order to meet him. It's actually something that, again, they lifted directly from Paper Mario 64, but it makes me wonder if you had done that before that point, would anything have happened? And I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
Ooh, I don't know the answer to that. Yeah. I think they bring it up, but they're like, I think they find some way to be like, no, it's not the time for this. No, it must be a mistake or something like that.
That sounds like something they would do, yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right, I've been kind of putting it off, but let's just do it. You get the ticket from Don Pianta after you bring him, his daughter, and Frankie back, and they reconcile. And you and Pianta are boys for life or whatever now. And so you go to Glitzville and enter the Glitz Pit.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me about the Glitz Pit, man. Go ahead.
The Glitz Pit is where dreams become reality and where the struggle of mind over matter really thrives. The Glitz Pit is where it's at. It's the best chapter. It's the best chapter in the entire game.
A lot of people think so, yeah. So essentially, the Glitz Pit is this kind of like WWE style WrestleMania event thing that goes on up in the sky. You take a blimp to get to Glitzville, and
somehow they've engineered a floating island.
Yeah, somehow they have engineered a floating island, Cloud City from Star Wars in Mario, and the reigning WWE champion Rockhawk is holding on to the crystal star in his championship belt. So we have to enter the Glitz Pit and work our way to the top and become champion to get it. Mm-hmm. And thus begins the most monotonous and repetitive thing I have ever dealt with in an RPG, possibly full stop.
No way. All right. First of all, the rise of the Great Gonzalez, which is what they call Mario, is awesome. It is so fun. So yes, there's a grind, of course, because you start at rank 20 and you have to work your way down to rank 1 and at rank 1 or rank 2, and then you can have a chance to fight Rockhawk for the title. And when you win the title belt, well, on the title belt, which is like a normal WWE, WWF type of belt, there's a big old star piece, golden star piece in the middle, and that's the prize. That's what you need, but there's no way to get it unless you beat the champ. So you got to grind through the levels. And yes, there is no skipping levels. You literally have to do 20 or more fights to get down to that point, right?
Yeah. If you lose, you have to do the same battle all over again.
Yes. And kind of go through almost the same story too a little bit. Like you kind of get bumped backwards. So whereas you and I remember watching you stream this too. I was on your stream. I was watching you play it. I was all hyped, and I was like, "Oh man, he's getting to chapter 3. He's in chapter 3. He's gonna meet Rockhawk. He's gonna love this. It's so awesome. It's a mixture of great type of." I hesitate to use the word grinding because it's negative. It's inherently negative, in video games, but it's ascending the ranks, battling unique and individual enemies for most of the battles. Some of them are a little copy paste, but mostly the enemies on every level are unique, and they have some attitude. They have some interesting aspects or some interesting mechanics that you have to deal with every time. It's a chance to tattle every enemy and get new funny information from Goombella. And as all of this is going on, you're also unearthing a mystery through emails and through sneaking around and through talking with the fighters. There is this, a series of mysterious emails sent by X, right? I think it's X is who sends them. And you're finding out this this hidden, this hidden agenda behind it all. And all this not incredible storytelling, of course, but it's cool. It's just a dual narrative that you have to go through. And then you get also pretty quick or halfway through chapter 3. I don't remember exactly when you get him, but you get the Yoshi, which you get a little Yoshi egg and it hatches at a certain point in the story. And depending on how long it's taken you to get to that point, I think it's from when you got the egg to when you have the opportunity to hatch the egg, depending on what minute you're at between 1 and 20 and it resets, that determines like what color the Yoshi's hair is.
Well, his whole body.
And like what color his whole, yeah, you're right. Sorry. You're right. His whole body changes colors because, there's a myriad of different Yoshi colors. And you actually got one of the rarer ones. I think you got either black or white. You got white. Yeah. White's like the last, I think it only happened like the last 2 minutes or something like that.
I think that's right. That sounds right.
Mm-hmm. So I loved chapter 3. I thought it was so unique going through it. I loved the fight with Grubba, who is the eventual boss. I loved the little twist with Rockhawk. At the time when I played the game, it was a original twist, but going back, I can see how you would call it like within 5 minutes. But when I first played it, I thought it was great. It was original. It was fun. What are your opinions?
Wow. Man, did we have a different experience. So, I mean, the short version is I hated this chapter. Like, just straight up, I'm not going to pull any punches. I hate this chapter. This chapter is real light on story, which isn't particularly compelling to begin with for me, and a bunch of grinding. Like, we can sugarcoat it however you want, but let's be real. You're just doing a bunch of battles over and over and over and over again. It's story-based progression grinding. Like, that's all it is. And the most interesting part about the entire chapter to me was that you get this little Yoshi egg and you kind of carry it with you and you don't know what's going to hatch out of it. You don't know what's going to happen. And then you get this punk-ass Yoshi kid that pops out of this thing. And you can ride on him even though he's only an infant, which probably negligence on Mario's part to some degree, even in this whack-ass Mushroom Kingdom with their non-existent child abuse laws. But other than that, I mean, you just go through battle after battle after battle. There is, however, and actually, okay. So I actually have the Mini Yoshi, which apparently his official name is Mini Yoshi, times here.
Yeah, because you can name him, I think.
Yeah. So, and I named mine Blanco since he was white. But in the first 6 minutes, so 0 to 6 minutes, he will be green. 6 to 9 minutes, he'll be red. 9 to 11 minutes, he will be blue. 11 to 15 minutes, he will be orange. 15 to 18 minutes, he will be pink. 18 to 19 minutes, he will be black. And 19 to 20 minutes, he will be white. So there was a 1 minute window in which I could have gotten the white one. Although there was
and you got
a 2 minute window where you can get black or white, which are the two rarest ones. And I will say, just looking at them, I think for me personally, I like the orange one the best. But it doesn't matter. Blanco was cool. Like, we got along. He was all right. He's a cool kind of dude. It just sucks that his chapter is so boring and monotonous. Because, I mean, like, there's not, aside from Rockhawk and Mini Yoshi, there's not really a whole lot of interesting characters in this chapter at all, really.
I don't know. So I definitely had a different experience. So I liked that there was like the Vince McMahon of the whole thing was Grubba. He was in charge of the Glitz Pit. He was the one coordinating fighters. He was the one pulling the strings. He was the one promoting Rock Hawk and making Rock Hawk the champ. Who Rock Hawk is just essentially the like golden eagle version of Hulk Hogan.
Yes.
Like, he's extremely charismatic. He's hilarious. He's a little derpy, but you love him because he's pure. He is a wrestling champion through and through, and he has the charisma, the glitz, and the glory to get him there. And all the strings are being pulled by Grubba, and there is a reporter trying to undercover like what's going on, like the shadowy side of the Glitz Pits. I forgot her name, but there is a pink toadette.
Jolene.
That is Jolene, yes, who is a reporter trying to undercover things. She's trying to get into areas, trying to talk with people. People are ignoring her. And you're getting these secret emails sent by X, which is unraveling the plot as it moves forward until you find, what happens to the original champion, which was Mush, who's Jolene's sister. She was, taken by Grubba. I think after you beat Grubba, she comes back. I think she was in his stomach or something, right? And then I think, doesn't Grubba have some type of invincibility mechanic when you fight him?
Yeah, so Grubba's so you get Prince Mush back after you defeat Grubba and destroy his machine. And his machine was essentially like sucking the life force out of these quote unquote retired combatants.
Yes.
And once you destroy the machine, then you can battle Grubba as normal, because with the power of the machine, he turns into Macho Grubba.
Yeah.
Definitely not an allusion to Macho Man Randy Savage. And
he was using the whole story is that he orchestrated this entire Glitz Pit, and he's running it all just to harvest the strength of the champions old. As they retire, he would harvest their strength. Right. So I thought that was fantastic. That's a great story, not necessarily original now if you play it, but back then, I was like, oh, what a great story. Didn't see that coming. There's a lot of fun. And I think what you're missing is that all other chapters, there's grinding, but it's grinding in the form of progression. So you're going from room to room, you're going from different areas, you're unlocking different areas as you gain companions or you gain abilities. So the natural progression of your level and your skill grows just as you navigate through the story or whatever the chapter has. The chapter 3, there is no just random enemies. It's just purely your leveling from chapter 2 to chapter 4 is done in the 20 matches that you fight with these 20 unique combatants. You're not grinding on mobs. You're not grinding on smaller things. It's just you go through these 20 fights, which I'd argue you would fight significantly more than 20 battles in other chapters just against random mobs. So you actually do less grinding in chapter 3. It just feels like grinding because that's what you do. You have to battle as progression directly, whereas battling was just something that you did to get past the mobs or the enemies or the mid boss in another chapter. So I thought it was well designed because you still come out of chapter 3 at a well enough level to take on things in chapter 4 without needing to grind. You just go through the 20 matches and you're pretty much prepared.
So here's my problem with that. The difference between chapter 3 and these other chapters, yes, there might be more battles, maybe more quote unquote grinding in those games. But the difference is you can see the enemies on the overworld and avoid them. There's no avoiding battles in chapter 3, and in fact, there's nothing else to do except battle in chapter 3, except for these tiny interstitials where you kind of skulk around and look for information, which is fine, I guess. But then you come back and go through the exact same dialogue again and get into another battle again for your next battle to move the plot forward. And it's just the same thing over and over and over and over again. Like you said, the plot isn't bad per se in chapter 3. It's just bogged down so heavily by this repetitive mechanic that they created that it overshadowed whatever was good in that chapter for me.
So I think they could have done a better job of not setting it up to be. So I think they wanted you to have breaks in between each fight to do whatever you wanted. So yes, every time you needed to schedule a new fight, you had to talk to the you had to talk to the Game Boy Advance that was on the wall, and you had to schedule a new fight with Grubba and then go through the similar dialogue every single time. So if you're grinding through matches, it's a little repetitive, but you have to remember it's broken up in, like, there is a midpoint at 10 matches. After you get to rank 10, you move on to a new room. There's like the rookie or the amateur room, which is beaten down and decrepit and things are falling apart, leaking. You have ne'er-do-wells there that are kind of rooting you on to raise up in the ranks, the Great Gonzalez. And then you go to the kind of semi-pro room, which is nicer, has better amenities, and that's where everyone's kind of fighting for. And the individual warriors that are in the rooms themselves are endearing, because there's some warriors that are in there for forever apparently, and they just can't raise up the ranks. They just can't rise. They're struggling. All they know is the Glitz Pit. So you kind of get a little attached to them, and you have some pretty good dialogue between them. And every 3 or 4 matches, or every few matches, you have a new part of the story being exposed to you. So you're not grinding through more than a few matches before there's a large bout of exposition given, whether that's sneaking around and breaking into the champ's room, which is just its own room as large as the other lockers, or you're going through the air vents, you're listening in on conversations, you're getting strange emails sent by X, you're talking with Jolene to try and find her sister who is the former champ, or just trying to uncover anything that's going on. It is broken up. So they could have done a better, like they could have flowed it a little bit better. I think if they would have had 2 or 3 battles seamlessly move into the next, it probably wouldn't have felt like so much of a chore, but it's still so endearing for me. It's going to be real hard to pry me off of this hype train that I have for chapter 3. I do love it. It's something that's always stuck with me more than any other chapter in the game.
And I mean, to be clear, I don't want to diminish this chapter for anybody. If you really love this chapter, good for you. But for me, while all those things that you just discussed are definitely there, like I'm not going to try and deny that they're there, they just didn't do enough for me, and they weren't common enough for me for it to sway me into enjoying all of these back-to-back battles.
And I think that's what's interesting, seeing someone's perspective playing it now versus when I was playing it as a kid or as a teen, because all my friends, we all love the Glitz Pit. Like, we would be in school and all my friends are stupid, and we would just be in like the cafeteria. Well, when I was younger, of course. Well, that's still true now. I'd be in the cafeteria and I would hear one of my friends like yell like "Rock Hawk!" like from across the cafeteria, like the actual main character in this chapter does. He just screams his name like, "Are you ready to rock?" in all caps, and I would just hear my friends yell that across the cafeteria just like some bozos. And I don't know, we always hyped it up so much. So just like memories like that really stuck with me. I love it.
So moving on to a chapter that actually did stick with me and made a more positive impression. I think the chapter 3 stands
this is a cool chapter.
2 great chapters.
Chapter 4 is so cool.
The creepy steeple. So talk to me about the creepy steeple.
It's awesome. There's a lot of pigs.
There are a lot of pigs.
There are a lot of pigs in this one. I love the enemy in it, Dupless. I thought the story was really cool. I love the side story between the 3 sisters, between their Siren sisters, right? Or something like that, right? It was Vivian. You'll have to help me on the names. I remember Vivian, of course, because she eventually becomes a companion, but she has 2 other sisters too.
She is sisters with Beldam and... Oh, damn. What's her other sister? I'll come up with it in a second. Go on for now.
So the 3 sisters are more or less contracted by I think by either the main enemy or I can't exactly remember who contracted them, but they're just mercenaries essentially. They're on their way. They're trying to stop Mario. Every chapter they appear, and every chapter they do some bumbling thing which causes their efforts to ultimately fail. Well, in the 4th chapter here, they play a much larger part. So Vivian definitely is the standout. She is one of the 3 sisters, constantly being berated by the older sister, where the middle sister is this kind of portly ghost. It's a little dumpy. It's kind of a Three Stooges vibe going on, right?
Yes.
And Vivian is the youngest sister, and eventually she gets so downtrodden, so mad at her other sisters that she leaves them and joins your team when she sees what's going on with Dupless. Maybe you can elaborate more on what the overall story in Chapter 4 is, because I'm still vaguely coming back to me.
That's more or less accurate. Marilyn is the 3rd sister.
Marilyn.
Yeah, Marilyn, okay. Beldam, and Vivian. But yeah, I mean, essentially we come to this town, and Dupless has turned all the inhabitants into pigs, which is, needless to say, a little bit distressing to Mario, who has to be the hero to everybody. So we go to the creepy steeple and look to hunt him down, only to find out that Dupless has the incredibly obnoxious ability to turn into anybody. So he, douchebag that he is, pretends to be defeated, turns into Mario, and wanders off with your party. And you have to wander around, get your party back to make them realize that you're the real Mario, come back onto your side, actually defeat Dupless, and reclaim the Ruby Star. Is TLDR for that.
Yeah, and he steals your essence, so you wander around as like the Shadow Mario.
Yes.
Which is so cool. And once again, the aesthetics of the town are outstanding. It's a beautiful location, really, really creepy and eerie, kind of like the Chapter 3 in the Forever Forest and Boo's Mansion, similar to that, but I think a little more refined. I actually enjoy the aesthetics here a lot more, and the story is, I think, in this chapter is definitely better, although still is daunting because Dupless, once again, another ghosty town, is being overrun by something which is just either consuming all of them or just changing them into pigs. So.
And very reminiscent of Gusty Gulch from Paper Mario 64.
Oh, yes. So
go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I'll say I love this chapter. I really do.
Yeah, I love this chapter too. And one of the things that I love the most that kind of sticks out to me is while you're playing this, the only way to defeat Dupless is to say back to him his real name, which you don't know, obviously. And he's so confident that he pops out when you're trying to get back to town and challenges you to say his real name to him. And what's interesting about it is even if you know his real name, it's literally impossible to do it because the letter that you need to complete his name isn't in the board. I think P is missing from the keyboard the first time he asks you to do this. And you have to go back to the creepy steeple and get the physical letter P out of the basement so that you can tell him his real name.
I completely forgot about that. Wow.
Yeah, he has his pet parrot guarding the letter P in the basement. Parrot, of course, because P. But so you have to go recover the letter P so that you can say his real name back to him and get your essence back and become Mario again. Which is really interesting. Like they really thought that out. Like nobody's ever going to just randomly guess Dupless, but they did that as seemingly as a measure for people who are playing it a second time. Like, nope, there's no way to shortcut this. You cannot win at this point in the stage. And
it's smart, it's meta, and it's just entertaining. You know, like it's one of those quirky things that you look back on and you're just like, oh, that's smart. You know, it's fun. It just adds a really nice, just a fun little mechanic to the game. You literally can't type P, so you have to find it in his castle.
Yep. So the other thing of note in Chapter 4 is this is when we find out what is behind the titular 1,000-year door. In the Peach interstitial during this chapter, Tech reveals to Peach that behind the 1,000-year door lies the soul of a 1,000-year-old demon. And spoiler alert, that's not misdirection or incorrect information. There really is a demon in there.
Yeah, surprisingly.
Yeah, like that seems like the kind of thing where you're playing and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, sure. There's no, there's seriously a 1,000-year-old demon. So she relays this to Mario's DS, and Mario has a renewed sense of, holy shit, they're really going to cause problems if they open this 1,000-year door. So from here, we go to what apparently some people have a few misgivings about for Chapter 5, but I love Chapter 5. Chapter 5 is the chapter that I would say is my favorite, if not chapter. And Chapter 5 is the island of Keyhall Key. Do you remember this chapter very well?
Not very well. I remember Admiral Bombery, who is the companion. Love the guy. He's great. I use him a lot, actually. I use both bomb characters in the games pretty frequently, but I don't remember this chapter very much, if at all. Like I remember struggling to find things in the jungle itself, but I don't have a very good memory of this at all.
So first and foremost, you have to recruit Bobbery before you can even go to Keyhall Key, which is an interesting thing. Like, this took me a long time to figure out how to do this. I don't know if you recall how you recruit Bobbery, but essentially you have to use the power of Mini Yoshi to get across this little river that's on the east side of Rogueport and climb up onto the top of the houses and jump into his fireplace. Once again, ripped straight out of Paper Mario 64.
Yeah.
But regardless, you kind of smash into this dude's house, and he's like, what the ungodly hell? I locked my door for a reason, and you're going to come smashing through my fireplace. What the hell is wrong with you? Get out. No. I don't care what you want. Get out. And he kicks you out. And then you have to, like, convince him that coming with him is the way to respect and honor his wife and all. Anyway, so you recruit Bobbery, you go to Keyhall Key, and then, like you said, you spend a long time on this island just trying to find, like, fruit and all these kinds of things to get keys so you can get into this cave. This is also where you meet a recurring character in Paper Mario, Wacka the Mole.
Yeah.
Who you can, but people tell me you shouldn't, beat him over the head constantly for the best heal item in the entire game.
Pretty much the best item. I think it's 25 HP, 25 FP, right?
It's either 25 or 50. I can't remember which, but yeah, it's incredibly good. There's nothing else that even comes close unless you cook to get better items.
Mm-hmm. I think you can actually cook that too.
Yeah, you can. Although you have to be careful, because if you don't cook it with the right item, you'll cook it into something considerably worse than what you started with. So once you get into the Pirate's Grotto, as it were, you have to kind of wander around this cave system, and you get this ability. This is actually something that we haven't talked about up to this point, but is something that has been going on the whole time. You get this power to transform into a boat. So throughout the game, you get these different paper powers. The first one that you get is the ability to turn into a paper airplane, because Paper Mario is made out of paper, so why not make a paper airplane? You also get the ability to roll into a tube, and that's how you get to Admiral Bobbery. And now you get the ability to turn into a boat so that you can cruise across the waters to get where you need to go in this cave system, eventually leading you up to the Pirate King Cortez, who at this point is long since dead, but is an animated 4-limbed skeleton a la, like, what's his name? From Attack of the Clones. You know who I'm talking about? Grievous. General Grievous. Yeah, just like General Grievous, except instead of a robot, he's a skeleton. It's a very, very cool boss fight. I think this is my favorite boss in the game, actually. And as it turns out, I didn't know this, but he has an attack where his swords, his 4 like swords and his hook will like float around him before he throws them at you. If you use Flurry's Gust ability, you can just blow them off the screen.
And he can't use them again? Or
I don't know if they'll come back eventually, but that's his most damaging attack, so it'll at least stop the attack.
I think what I did then was use Vivian and use her ability to like turn you into a shadow, so the next attack against you just goes through.
That's what I did too. The only thing with that is it uses a lot more points to do Vivian's ability than to use flurries. So,
oh, wow, I didn't know that.
That's just a fun little factoid about that one.
Yeah, cool.
But Cortez is really cool. What do you think about Cortez?
It's a fun boss battle. I don't remember too much about the story on that island. I just remember a lot of jungle, a lot of fetch quests to find things. I remember Flavio, the guy that actually owns the ship and brings you there. He needs Admiral Bombery to be the actual navigator to bring him to the island itself. Remember he's a very colorful character. Cortez is a fun boss fight, really, really fun boss fight. And I think that after that, you get a large section with Peach, which was pretty memorable too.
You do, although I would say possibly the more interesting part about that is before that happens, once you defeat Cortez, Grotus shows, or not Grotus. Oh God, why is his name escaping me?
Crump?
Well, Crump, yes, Lord Crump shows up, and you have a sea battle on the pirate ship with Cortez against Crump, so that he doesn't destroy Cortez's island.
Yeah, doesn't Cortez actually doesn't his skull go on your ship then, and he's with you the entire time now?
Yeah, he's he fights with you, and it's this really cool sea battle that you have with him to end out the chapter, which is really, really cool. And then, like you say, you have this long sequence with Peach where she can now turn invisible after mixing together some potion. And she has to strip down naked because he can't make her dress invisible, which, good God. In this day and age, just man, you made this for children? Are you for real?
Yeah, this is an introductory game? No, it's not.
Well, that was the first one, not this one, but... So the whole point of this is that she's going to go into Grotus's room to steal a data disk to give some more information to Mario. And then after that is what a lot of people consider to be the best chapter in the game, and that is the Excess Express.
This is so I do remember this chapter a lot too, because this is an incredible chapter. It is. It's a classic tale, been told countless times, with the Murder on the Orient Express, that kind of vein. And you have one of my favorite characters in the game who is the detective during it. Do you remember his name?
Pennington, if I recall correctly.
Pennington, just such a bumbling, lovable, and private investigator to trying to find out what's going on this train with things going missing. This was a great chapter. I really did love this chapter, and it's broken out in a really unique way where it's time based, right?
Yes.
So it's you got morning of day one, evening, then night of day one, and then morning of day two. And the story progresses and things become available and more things start happening overnight and you have to find out what's going on. It's a lot of fun. It really, really is a lot of fun.
So do you remember the most interesting part about Pennington in this chapter?
What?
That he uses his keen detective instincts and skills to determine that you are, in fact, the famous Luigi.
Yes. Yeah, I remember that now. You must be Luigi.
And not only that, but once you get back to the end of the chapter, you get to a museum that's run by Pennington. And at the top, if you climb up to the top of the first room in that museum, there's a badge that will turn you into Luigi.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I probably got it, but I don't remember being there. I know there are badges to turn you into Wario and Waluigi and things like that.
Yeah, so interestingly, you get the Wario badge from going so far into the Pit of 100 Trials, which we can talk about a little bit more in a second. But if you get the Luigi badge and then you get the Wario badge and put them both on, that is what turns you into Waluigi.
Yes.
Which is such a cool little thing. Like, they didn't have to do that, but that's so clever.
Yeah, extremely clever, really, really fun. It took up too many badge points for me really to do, but usually I would put the Wario one on just because it's just kind of ironic.
I'm pretty sure that they cost 0 badge points, but
really? I always thought it was like at least 1.
I think they're free, but regardless. So what did you think about this chapter as a whole?
It was great. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It was a good break because chapter 5 was a little. It was part of the course, going through different puzzles, grinding out on different enemies, finding your way through the location itself, the mazes, fighting a big boss at the end. Chapter 5 was kind of traditional Paper Mario level design done well. And then Chapter 6 was just completely different. So it's kind of a good break.
Now, Chapter 6 is derivative of the Penguin outpost in Paper Mario 64, although, as we will soon see in Chapter 7, there's actually a location that's also derivative of that chapter in this game. So they kind of broke that one out and took their copy pasta and put it in a couple of places. But I really liked Chapter 6. I like Chapter 6 a lot. Like you said, I think it gives you a good break from what could otherwise be a little bit monotonous going through the same kind of formulaic chapter over and over and over and over again. Because you think this whole time that you're trying to get to Riverside Station? No, Poshley Heights is where you end up. You stop at Riverside Station, but Poshley Heights is where you're trying to go. This is your end goal, but actually the chapter takes place on the train on your way to Poshley Heights, which I thought was a nice subversion of expectations. And it's also worth noting that this is the first chapter where you don't get a new companion. At this point, other than an optional companion that we haven't talked about yet, you have all companions in the game. It was really interesting, but I guess it's actually a good segue into Miss Mouse, who you brought up earlier. But you see a couple of times throughout the game where she'll show up trying to pilfer and pillage wherever you happen to be for rare badges. And come to find out that she's actually the mouse that runs the badge shop in the middle of Rogue. So she's out there stealing badges from people and then turning around and selling them back to you.
She's an entrepreneur.
Which is really funny. She, like most females in the Mario universe, has a crush on Mario for some reason.
Yes, hers isn't. I think it becomes obvious towards the end of the game, but you first see her in the first chapter. She steals a badge when you enter a room that has a chest in it, and the chest is already open, and you see her escaping with the badge, I believe.
That's correct. Yep. And you run into her again in the item shop right after that, but she kind of plays it off like she's not that character. And even though it's clear to you and to Mario that that's who it is, but she's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. What would you like to buy?
Yeah. And then also with Chapter 6, it's narrative driven, it's story driven, full, completely, but it also breaks it up a little bit when you do eventually stop at Riverside Station, because there isn't really a desert level in like in the original one where there was exclusively a desert level.
Yes.
Riverside Station is kind of your only type of deserty environment that you can go through, and you can get. I think you get the new boots at Riverside Station or something along those lines. Like you get something there that's
you get the spring jump ability.
Spring jump, that's what it is, which opens up I think other areas of the game too. But that was nice. You stop there for a little bit. You pick up a few things. I don't remember exactly what happens at Riverside Station, but eventually when you get to Poshley Heights, you just kind of right away get the next star. Like there's no. I don't know. Is there a boss battle in Chapter 6? I don't remember one.
I don't think so. Although you do have to go through this entire sequence once you get to the museum to actually get it. You have to go into the painting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember getting to Poshley Heights. That part of my memory is a little clouded. But the actual going through the different rooms on the train, talking with Pennington, that part I definitely remember pretty well. Thinking that you're Luigi.
Yes.
Which I wish I was Luigi, because if they just made a game that was Luigi's story throughout all of this, I would absolutely play it.
You and me both. But at this point, I'm a big enough fan of Paper Mario that they could put out anything with that name on it. I'm like, all right, I'm buying it.
We haven't talked about Luigi this entire time.
You want to talk about Luigi?
I want to talk about Luigi because Luigi is one of my favorite things about this
game. Luigi is my favorite character in this entire game.
Rightfully so.
So go ahead. Tell me about Luigi.
Luigi has the best story ever. So periodically throughout the game, as you finish chapters, you can go back to Rogueport and you'll see Luigi there with a new companion. And he's got similar companions to what you do, but they're just different characters from the Mario universe. So Luigi, his whole premise, he doesn't actually do anything in the game, but you can ask him about his adventures. He's found himself on this parallel adventure to you somehow, and he's getting himself in all of these wacky scenarios. All of his companions are just tired of his shit. He's constantly endangering their life, getting them into precarious situations. He's always calling you bro. He's like, yo, bro, guess what, bro? Yo, dude, yo, bro, last time I was over here, bro, let me tell you about it, bro. He is so incredible in this game.
He really is. So much so that by the end of the game, he has had a series of books written about his adventures.
Yeah.
Which may or may not have been written by Luigi himself.
Slightly embellished. And then his companions, when they chime up and they start talking about it, always correcting him and being like, no, we were in severe peril and it's all his fault.
My absolute favorite is, I think it's actually the very first one, but you see him with a charred blooper and Luigi's telling you this epic story of how he conquered everything, and then you talk to his blooper companion. He's like, "No, dude, you threw me into a lava pit, you moron."
Yeah,
I'm only here to take a check out of your ass for that.
Yeah, he's recruited by the leaders of the Waffle Kingdom, and he's going after Princess Eclair. Yep. Man, and it's a lot of text. Like you're reading a short story literally about Luigi and his misadventures, but it is worth taking the time to read it, go through it, and just enjoy the ride because it's hilarious and it's once again so well written. Like everything else in this game, if they just took the engine of Paper Mario, took the assets, and then just showed Luigi's story, I guarantee it would be incredible. It would be hilarious.
Can you imagine Paper Luigi in the Waffle Kingdom?
Oh man, just take my money. Take it immediately.
So, once we go through Poshley Heights, we then find ourselves in Chapter 7, Mario Shoots the Moon. And, of course, this is towards the end of the game. This is the last real chapter in the game, per se. And so, what else would we do but exactly what Paper Mario 64 did and go to Far Outpost, a very icy land, although, albeit no Canadian penguins. This time we got Russian bombs.
Nope. Russian bombs.
And
very short chapter.
It is, but it's also the worst part of the game, except for Chapter 3. Chapter 3 is probably the worst part of the game. But this would, I think, be what most people say is the worst part of the game. Because the very beginning, in order to fire this cannon and get Mario shot from the Mushroom Kingdom to the moon, you need to hunt down General White. Do you remember this General White side quest?
Yes, I remember him. I remember you having to backtrack to, well, I think Petalburg, right?
Every single location in the entire game.
Yes, that's right. What a ridiculous quest.
So bad, dude. And there's no quick and easy way to get to all of these locations. You just have to, the slow way, go from here to here to here to here to here to here.
Yeah. And I think maybe they did that to encourage backtracking and getting like badges that you could now receive with your newer abilities, assuming the player hadn't already done that. I don't know why they structured it this way, outside of just to say, hey, remember, you have all these new abilities. We're going to send you back to everywhere you've already been. If you miss something, now's your chance.
Well, I can tell you what they actually incited, and that's resentment, because I absolutely despised this, and from what I can tell, most people did as well.
Yeah, it's definitely not the best. It's not the best. It's not terrible because the game is so enjoyable that you're already doing backtracking usually, so it is redundant. But it's cute. It's different. It's not just another. Here's a large pre-level before a dungeon, and then here's an end boss. Like it is unique in itself.
So I'm gonna go ahead and knock those rose-colored glasses off your face, because this is bad, dude. It's just not good. As much as I like this game, and as much as I'm willing to concede that Chapter 3 is fun for some people, like this is just bad. But fortunately, it doesn't go on for that long. You get over it reasonably quickly, and then you shoot to the moon.
Yeah, all the bomb-oms get together underneath the cannon, and they just blow themselves up, and they have a great time doing it. They're so excited to blow this cannon up.
They live to blow up. It's so great.
They are so freaking excited. They're like, oh my God, we get to use it.
And so once you get there, then you get to actually explore this X-Knot fortress that Peach has been at this whole time, and finally beat Lord Crump in Magnus von Grapple 2.0 and claim the final crystal star.
And that part's pretty straightforward,
Yeah, like this whole chapter is mostly forgettable, but it's memorable because of that really frustrating search for General White at the beginning, and the kind of cool locale of the X-Knot Fortress. It's very short. There's some cool things that you can do on the side, like you can go talk to Tech, who's just kind of chilling there. But, I mean, there's not really much else. You kind of just wander through this fortress, which is minor puzzle-based, and beat up Lord Crump, and then you bounce.
Yeah, it's really just putting together the story for the final chapter, Chapter 8.
Correct. And Chapter 8, the Thousand-Year Door, is exactly what it sounds like. You go to the Thousand-Year Door, open it, and kind of go through this final dungeon before facing down this 1,000-year-old demon who has possessed Peach. But not before Bowser finally catches up with the party. Finally catches up.
This whole time he's been pursuing you, going through different types of Mario levels himself, failing spectacularly, yelling at Cammy, busting his way through levels. The Bowser portions are just as treasured as they are in the 64 one and are a treat. We haven't really talked about them too much, but they are a lot of fun to just watch, and they're really short. Usually you're only controlling Bowser for 5 minutes, and then the rest of it is just narrative, but it's a great little side that always happens. It's always Mario beats a chapter, then it goes to Peach, then it goes to Bowser, and then you're back at Mario. It follows that formula every single chapter, and it's a lot of fun. It really lets you look forward to beating the chapter to push that story forward and to see what Bowser's doing, what Peach is doing. It's a lot of fun. It's really good.
Yeah, I agree. It's a great, and I think the fact that they're only about 5 minutes long or so makes them really memorable and special. If they made them any longer than that, I think they would probably overstay their welcome a little bit too much.
Yeah.
So you get this great kind of build up the whole time where Bowser is trying to chase you down, trying to catch you, and then finally at the end he does, and you have this face off with Bowser. And it's a great payoff to that story. Before you face off against Grotus, and then come to find out he's not the final boss, because the demon in the Thousand-Year Door wants nothing to do with him and wants to kill us all. So then you have to face down the Thousand-Year Door demon who is possessing Princess Peach by using the power of love and friendship, which I know that you really love this scene. So why don't you tell me about it?
The whole final fight is incredible. You fight Peach. That's the final boss, is Peach. Not directly Peach, of course. She's being possessed by the Shadow Queen, which is the demon inside of inside the Thousand-Year Door, which is its own dungeon. But then the last little chest or thing that you open is the actual demon. But I love this fight. I don't recall the portion that you're talking about, like how you finally beat her, you mean? So with the power of the crystal stars and all of Mario's friends that he gained throughout his journey, he defeats the Shadow Queen. Is that what you want to hear, Dean? I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. I loved everything about it, because you said it yourself, Mario's a hero to everybody. So you see all these, I believe it's kind of like Goku getting, his energy from everyone on the planet Earth. It goes through it cycles through everybody, and then you power the crystal stars, you fight back the Shadow Queen, which makes originally the Shadow Queen is invulnerable, so you can't do any damage, right? Am I remembering that correctly?
That's correct. Yep.
So then, with the power of friendship and love and foreverness, you make the Shadow Queen vulnerable, and then you proceed to actually do the battle itself, which is great. Battle's fantastic. Peach looks awesome, possessed, by the way. She has this awesome purple, like her gown, her dress turns purple, and she has like these wicked eyes, and it's just a lot of fun. It's a really good final boss battle. If you had to press me on which one between 64 and Thousand Year Door had a better final boss, they're very similar. Actually, wow, I never considered this, but they're very similar, because Bowser in 64 is invulnerable until you use the power of the stars there to make him vulnerable, right?
That's correct.
So they're actually very similar final battles, but they're both very good. I think I prefer Thousand Year Door's battle. Bowser's fight is really, really great, but the added twist that you're really fighting Princess Peach, because the demon needs a vessel, and that's the whole reason that Lord Crotus captured Princess Peach, was because he knew the demon needed a vessel to possess and then to live again. So Princess Peach was that vessel. So you fight Princess Peach at the end, eventually you beat him, and then the Great Gonzalez lives again and is a master and everything. Oh, and the Yoshi kid, it goes through all of the ending of the Thousand Year Door goes through all of the companions, and it goes through like, what are they doing now? And the mini Yoshi changes his ring name to the Great Gonzalez Jr., and he's like fighting through the Glitz Pit. I love that.
That was a nice little touch. I mean, as much as I didn't enjoy the Glitz Pit, I was like, that's a cool little throwback to that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's a Thousand Year Door. Any final thoughts on that?
Well, clearly we can talk a lot about Paper Mario. I don't think that's ever been into question. And although my memory isn't perfect of the game, it still holds a very strong emotional bond with me. So it's one of everyone that has played video games throughout their childhood has those games which made a significant impact on them, and which is like it's a comforting blanket, like whenever I play Thousand Year Door, I just have that, I have that memory of me playing on my old CRT with my GameCube in my room at 2 a.m. in the morning when I'm supposed to be sleeping because I have school in the morning, and I'm playing Paper Mario, and I'm grinding through the gold and Mazy Daisies, which are worse in Thousand Year Door than they are in the original one. Grinding on the Mazy Daisy, the shiny one in Thousand Year Door, is significantly worse than it is in 64, mainly because your max level in 64 is level 27, which is really random, but I think it's based off of how high you can get a specific stat to. But in Thousand Year Door, your max level is 99. How these people get to 99 is beyond me. I couldn't do it. I got to way high enough of a level through the Mazy Daisies to make my playthrough pretty easy on most of the playthroughs. Some playthroughs I don't grind. I go for the challenge of it, and I just don't want to spend hours and hours grinding on that one enemy. But yeah, that was always kind of annoying. They're rare, and they're just harder to find. At least that's how I remember it being. But love these games, would highly recommend them. And if anyone's ever interested in playing it, then I would recommend playing 64 first, because they're so similar, even graphically. They're very similar. Like the 64 is no slouch. So, of course, Thousand Year Door is cleaner, it's sharper, it's got more fidelity, but the 64 one definitely holds up even to this day, to where if you play it, it's not gonna distract you by how old it is. It's just going to be nice. It's going to be very characteristic. It's going to be unique. So definitely love these games. wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I would second all of that. I mean, we've gone long here today, but I think we could cover the rest of the Paper Mario games at some other time. I mean, there's a lot I have to say about those. You haven't experienced them yet, so we can
No, I haven't.
we can make that happen for you, and then maybe we can come back and revisit them. But at least as a kind of preliminary overview for these first two games, and these are both really great games, and even the games that we were talking about that came before and in the middle and after, like they're all worth experiencing on their own. But I would kind of echo your sentiment. Start at the beginning and work your way forward. You'll be rewarded for that. Even if you really just want to play Thousand Year Door. Thousand Year Door is an incredible game. Like if you can only play one, yeah, play Thousand Year Door if you want to play Thousand Year Door. But if you can, take the time, go back, experience those first few games, and really just treasure the entire experience. Maybe stagger them a little bit more than I did. And not that hurt my opinion on the games, really, but it did color it. And I would say for me, Paper Mario 64, I think I like it a little bit more. Only because, as we discussed at length, Thousand Year Door is extremely derivative of Paper Mario 64. And I don't necessarily think that that's to its detriment, but it is definitely noticeable. And so I tend to give the kudos to 64 for being original in that regard. But I think that's going to do it for our discussion today on Paper Mario for the Nintendo 64 and Paper Mario the Thousand Year Door on the Nintendo GameCube. Jordan, do you want people to find you somewhere? Maybe hit you up? You got anything you want to plug?
Nothing I want to plug. No, I don't really have a strong presence. Don't know if I plan on it either, but I'll just be here whenever you need me to provide a layman's insight into video games, especially ones that really impacted my childhood. I can give you my perspective, though admittedly through rose-colored glasses, as you pointed out. But I think these games are important. I think there are a lot of other games that I could definitely shower upon others. But yeah, we'll get there if we get there. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. And until next time, when we talk about something else extremely casually, which is all we do here, you will never get a professional opinion around these parts. I mean, maybe if we go on long enough, we might turn into the professional reviewer types, but I kind of doubt it. You can find everything down below. Discord channel if you want to come chat. Twitch channel if you want to see us play through these games, watch movies, and the like live, or anything else down below. Until next time, I hope you all have a great week.